Someone once told me the grass is much greener on the other side. These iconic words, beautifully sang by none other than Macy Gray, would perfectly sum up the amazing show that is As Told by Ginger. On surface level, the show's catchy theme song was the perfect tune to set the vibe of the entire show. However, deeper behind those words, there is so much more meaning. On all levels, this show has so much substance to it. The development of these characters over the years and the relationships that would come and go between them would be a roller coaster of an experience. But the theme song through and through would ring true as the seasons of the show and the years of our own lives would continue. The song recognizes the feeling in life, especially as an adolescent, of being unsatisfied with where you are in the life that you've been born into. Sometimes feeling curious about the lives of those around you who just seem to be so lucky to have it all. The cool kids who have all the nice things, the celebrities who have all the flashy lifestyles. However, oftentimes, when you get a glimpse over that fence, you find that the romanticized lifestyle that you've longed for isn't all that it's chalked up to be. Through that realization, you come to gain some appreciation for the life that you're living right now. Sometimes, it's okay to need a good shift in perspective in order to recognize that your grass is just as green as you need it to be. At the end of the day, we as people are all doing our best to figure out our place in this life. Shows like As Told by Ginger do a really great job of helping us as people recognize our struggles in everyday life, as it can oftentimes lend a tale that you might be able to relate to your own, especially when you're going through a sensitive time in your life. As Told by Ginger is a show that revolved around a group of kids figuring themselves out as they traverse through the drama-filled and social conflict-fueled journey that is junior high school. For most of us, that journey is a hard one. I know it was for me, at least. Middle school was a time of constant drama and just overall feeling like I was never good enough. Having a show like As Told by Ginger that could relate to some of those struggles is a really valuable thing for a kid to have at that age. This show would tackle issues like peer pressure, rumors, bullying, shaming, and honestly, so much more. It's a show that I have a lot to say about. Originally, this video was going to be about one specific episode that a ton of people have been requesting that I cover in the comments of past videos. But the thing is, it just didn't feel right to jump into that episode without some proper context. There is so much that leads up to that specific moment. It wouldn't do the series justice to just jump right into the spicy conclusion. Throughout this series, there are so many twists and turns. There are high moments that give you a bright and sunny, warm inside kind of feeling, and then there are the low moments that give you a pit in your stomach. Through and through, though, it's an emotionally gripping ride that I promise you're not going to want to miss. That's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, and for the next couple As Told by Ginger videos, we're going to deep dive into some episodes that follow the emotionally gripping tale told through this show, revolving at first around the relationship between Ginger and Darren, and of course, the events that lead up to it. Really quick though, before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much for clicking on this video and for being a part of my YouTube journey. If you're new here, hi, my name is Sean, and I love going on a nice nostalgic walk down memory lane, reliving past moments of cartoon history, be it looking back on the most morbid moments from a series, or just happily looking back on a show with my heart-shaped glasses. I pour a lot of love and passion into my videos, and I really appreciate you being here. Just for context, I'm starting this video on March 2nd of 2024. Currently, my channel just passed 128,000 subscribers, and I'm so incredibly thankful for all of you helping me reach that milestone. I'm setting a goal to hopefully reach 150,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so with all the love in the world, if you enjoy this video, please consider dropping a like, leaving a comment, and maybe subscribing if you feel like helping me reaching my goal by the end of 2024. Again, thank you so much for being a part of my YouTube journey, and I hope you enjoy the video. To start out, we're gonna set the scene and lay some foundation. we're starting by tackling a few really important key episodes from Season 1, starting with the episode called Stealing First. This episode starts out on an early winter morning before school, with Ginger's best friends, Macy and Dodie, waiting for her to be dropped off by her mom.
Hi, Mrs. Foutley!
Hello, Mrs. Foutley.
Oh, hi, Ginger. Did you ask your mom?
Did she ask her mom what?
Did she say yes?
Did I say yes to what?
The annual Lucky Junior High ski trip. It's this weekend, and... Thanks for the ride, Mom. I gotta run.
Don't slam it! Don't slam it!
The girls head into school, and Dodie is down Ginger's throat about how she hasn't had her permission slip for the school ski trip turned in yet. Ginger insists that she wants to talk about it at lunch, but Dodie is still very insistent on getting an answer now. Just then, Ginger is saved by the bell as Macy and Dodie run off to class. A while later, we get a glimpse at Ginger's brother Carl sitting with his best friend and Dodie's little brother, Hoodsy, at lunch over in the elementary school side. As the two are eating, Carl starts telling Hoodsy all about the ski trip that the middle schoolers are going on, saying that he has plans for them to secretly tag along. Before we can learn more about what they're planning, we cut right over to the middle school lunchroom where Ginger is sitting with Macy and Dodie, who are still expecting answers about why Ginger is dodging the ski trip.
Is this about how red your nose tends to get in the cold? Because I cannot stress enough the absolute magic a good concealer can work. Take, for example, the swollen hive on Macy's lip. Once a hideous, disfiguring pustule, now next to invisible.
Thanks to Dodie, my little Angora allergy is nobody's business but my own.
Dodie offers to work the same magic for Ginger's red nose, but Ginger admits to them that this has nothing to do with her nose at all. Just then, we cut right on over to the popular girls, Courtney and Miranda, as they're looking at the flyer for the ski trip. The two of them think that it sounds boring, so they decide that they're going to make a little bet to try to spice things up.
What did you have in mind?
Oh, I don't know. Something that makes the ski trip more interesting for us while simultaneously manipulating one or more of our classmates.
Ooh, Miranda, you're so bad.
I bet you that I can get the exchange student from France,
Jean-Pierre?
to go to first base on the chairlift.
Ooh, I like.
The girls both contemplate who they're going to try to lure into going to first base with Jean-Pierre. Courtney recommends Ginger, and when Miranda makes a comment about how he wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole, Courtney decides to bet that the loser has to do the winner's math homework for a week. Just like that, their bet is set in stone.
I wouldn't underestimate Miss Ginger if I were you, Miranda. Some people find her charm positively contagious.
Back in the lunchroom, we see Darren, Ginger's next-door neighbor and other best friend, come join the girls while they eat lunch. Dodie immediately asks Darren to tell Ginger why nobody in their right mind would miss the ski trip this weekend.
I'm not going.
Really, Darren? Why?
Well, I'm having the rack tighten on Saturday morning. You know, if I don't black out, I'm usually in bed for the rest of the day.
Oh.
Dodie keeps pressing and pressing, and eventually Ginger comes clean about the fact that she doesn't want to go because she can't ski at all.
What in the world does the ski trip have to do with skiing?
Dodie's right. There's plenty of other activities to indulge in, like hot chocolate at the ski lodge.
Or having your picture taken with a cute instructor. Hello. I guess you're right. You can have a great time on the ski trip without ever setting foot on the slopes.
Some reassurance from her friends makes her feel leagues better, and Ginger decides that she's in for the ski trip. Thankfully, her mind is at ease now, but just then, Courtney and Miranda approach. Courtney asks Ginger if she's going on the ski trip, and Ginger tells her that she still has to ask her mom, but she's sure that she'll say yes.
I'm really glad you're going because that hot new foreign exchange student will be there. And someone told me that he told them to tell me to tell you that he may want to sit with you on the chairlift ride and then ski down a more advanced slope, if you know what I mean.
Ginger's not ready for a more advanced slope, Courtney. She's not ready for any slope.
Oh, I think she is, Casey. Something tells me she is.
Later that night at home, we see Ginger sitting at the table while her mom is cleaning the kitchen and her brother Carl is digging through the fridge with hopes of throwing an old head of cabbage at a car. Her mom asks her about why she waited so long to ask about the ski trip, and Ginger opens up to her mom, telling her that it's because she was nervous. She struggles to put it into words, explaining that she was originally worried about one thing, but then she stopped being worried about it just in time to find an even bigger thing to be worried about.
How old were you the first time you went on a more advanced slope?
We're not talking about skiing anymore, are we?
Not really.
Carl, go throw the cabbage in our car.
Right on.
Oh, Ginge. It seems like just yesterday that you were learning to use your red plastic potty.
We cut to later on where Ginger is on the phone with Dodie, explaining how she tried to talk to her mom about the situation, and she just went on a potty training tangent and then hugged her for about 45 minutes straight. Dodie brushes it off completely, telling her to put a pin in that one, as she tries to direct the conversation into what Ginger's wearing at the ski trip. Just then, Dodie's mom picks up the phone and tells her that she needs to hang up, also asking Ginger to send Hoodsie home for dinner. They get off the phone, and we cut on over to Carl's room, where we see him and Hoodsie sitting on a makeshift chairlift that Carl set up in his room, talking about how they're practicing to break a world record for the longest amount of time spent sitting in a chairlift. Carl is just super stoked about it. Meanwhile, Hoodsie is nearly sweating to death wearing a snowsuit indoors on Carl's behalf. Just then, Ginger knocks on the door, telling Hoodsie that his mom wants him home.
Sorry, Carl. Gotta go.
What are you doing, Carl?
Information's classified. Oh, say, would you tell Mom I'll be taking supper in my sleeping quarters this evening? And if it's not a problem, I'd like my fruit cocktail baked inside my potato. Thanks in advance.
Super early the next morning, we see Ginger awake at the crack of dawn as she writes in her diary about the situation with Jean-Pierre. She's filled with a mixed bag of emotions.
But I still feel like a total spaz. Plus, I don't want Ian Richton to get the wrong idea. Oh, man, and I thought skiing was overwhelming.
We see Ginger's mom walking by, saying that they need to leave in 20 minutes. She walks into Ginger's room, telling her that she got her old ski jacket free of mothballs so that Ginger can borrow it. Meanwhile, over at school, we see Hoodsie and Carl arriving in secret as they lock their bikes up to a tree nearby.
And then she sprayed it with Lady Musk to hide the smell.
It looks kind of dirty.
That's because she's had it since she was a kid. It's totally ancient.
Well, let's try calling it vintage.
You know what I always say? You can't judge a candy bar by its wrapper.
Over on the bus, we see all the kids boarding, including Ginger, who gets all sorts of looks from the other kids, including Jean-Pierre, who seems very interested in her. As Ginger approaches, Miranda makes a comment about how Courtney has her work cut out for her. Courtney then decides to kick Miranda out of her seat, saying that she wants Ginger to sit with her instead. The bus goes on its way. All the meanwhile, the kids can hear screaming coming from Carl and Hoodsie, who are on top of the bus, hiding in the luggage, and taking the bumps of the bus at full force.
Now, tell me about your experience. So far, so good. The seats could be a little more comfortable, but...
I mean, tell me about your experience with boys.
Oh, right.
Ooh, last summer, she accidentally kicked Stuart Higsby in the groin.
Hi, we're busy right now. Leave a message and we'll get back to you.
But
Beep!
The only experience that Ginger has to share is when she held hands with a boy in 2nd grade, but the girls judge her when she tells them that they were holding hands cupped and not fingers laced.
Look, Ginger, I think you're a diamond in the rough, honest. But if you want to snag a boy like Jean-Pierre, you're going to have to act a little more advanced.
What did you have in mind?
We cut on over to everyone arriving at the ski resort. Ginger, Dodie, and Macy plan to stay away from the chairlift at all costs, considering that Ginger is trying to avoid skiing. All the meanwhile, Carl and Hoodsie are getting tossed off the top of the bus. Just like that, though, we cut on over to Ginger's mom, who's receiving a call from Hoodsie and Dodie's mom. It doesn't take too long for Lois to connect the dots that the boys lied to both of them about where they were. When she realizes that she last saw them in snowsuits and goggles, she knows exactly where they are, and we see her hop in the car as she heads off for the mountain. Along the way, she passes by Darren, who's sitting at a bus stop.
I was supposed to see my ortho today, but Dr. Weinstein canceled. Now I missed the ski trip for nothing.
Well, today's your lucky day, kiddo.
Back over on the mountain, we see Ginger confiding in her friends about how nervous she is because Courtney wants her to go to first base with Jean-Pierre.
What is first base exactly?
French kissing. Everybody knows that.
Sorry.
Heading over to the lift, Ginger? Don't take all day.
Or do.
Ginger panics because she doesn't know anything about kissing. She asks Dodie if she knows anything about it, and Dodie says that she almost kissed a boy one time.
It's really simple. You just do this. Mwah. Mwah.
Bonjour, my little snow chickens!
Over at the ski lift, Ginger and her friends approach as they discuss their plan to just ride up the lift and back down instead of dismounting. They get in line as Courtney is sparking up a conversation with Jean-Pierre, asking if he's seeing anyone right now.
A lot of girls like you, Jean-Pierre. You could have your pick of anyone.
It's true. But if you ask me, I think Ginger Foutley is pretty cute.
Ginger. She does have a certain... I don't know how you say.
Hi, Jean-Pierre.
Ah, sweet Rebecca. What can I say? I love all female girls.
As Jean-Pierre continues to talk about how girls are his weakness, we see Ginger and her friends standing back in line. Courtney calls Ginger over, saying that Jean-Pierre saved her a spot. As she prepares to go over, her friends remind her to keep their plan in mind.
What about the kiss? Do what feels right.
And remember, no means no.
Ginger, Jean-Pierre grows impatient. Come.
After that, we cut on over to Carl and Hoodsey, who are talking to the employee in charge of the chairlift. Ginger notices them there, and she starts to question them, but before it goes anywhere, she's forced onto the chairlift with Jean-Pierre by Courtney. As they head up, we cut over to Ginger's mom and Darren, who just arrived at the mountain in search of Carl. As the two begin their hunt, we cut to Ginger and Jean-Pierre on the chairlift while Courtney and Miranda are in the seat directly behind them, egging them on more or less. Meanwhile, a few more rows back are Carl and Hoodsey, who were successful in their attempt to bribe the chairlift worker to stop the lift for 16 hours straight. As the lift comes to a stop, we cut back over to Ginger, who's full-blown panicking.
We're stuck. This is terrible.
Is it terrible, Ginger? Or is it how you say, destiny?
I don't know. Maybe it's a little of each.
Just then, Carl's mom approaches the chairlift and figures out what's going on. The chairlift worker refuses to start the chairlift back up because of their world record attempt, but Lois threatens him with the world record for most unemployed, which makes him quickly change his tone. Meanwhile, back on the chairlift, Ginger is still trying to make small talk with Jean-Pierre.
This small talk has left your lips looking a little, how you say, frosty. Allow me to warm them for you.
Oh, you can do it, Ginger. You've got what it takes.
Keep in mind, JP, you can have anyone.
This is more fun than skiing, no?
No.
Just then, the ski lift turns back on, startling Ginger, causing her to fall off of it and hit the slope directly below. Ginger ends up flying down on her skis in a panic, but she quickly gets the hang of it and starts having a blast.
Hey, Ginger! I thought you said you didn't know how to ski.
Yeah, but I don't know how to French kiss either.
Where are you going, Ginger? No time.
I'm really sorry, Darren. I'll carry your books every day. Promise.
Hey, no sweat. My brother always said that wearing a cast was like a total babe magnet.
We see Ginger sign Darren's cast, and then she proceeds to look out the bus window as she reflects on her day and how much she learned about facing her fears.
I suppose skiing and quite possibly French kissing is just like everything else. It looks a lot harder than it is. It's actually kind of fun when you're doing it, and the trickiest part is knowing when to stop. But I'll have to get back to you on the kissing thing when I know firsthand.
There's a lot to this episode, and I feel like this is a great one for us to start our journey out. This is only the third episode of the show, and it really gives us a lot of context as far as a good majority of these characters are concerned. It just felt like the perfect episode to lay some good groundwork. This episode is one that really shines an interesting light on Ginger's friend group first and foremost. These would be constant themes throughout the entire series, but this episode really makes things clear. Macy is a relatively good friend to Ginger, however, she is very naive to a fault. Meanwhile, Dodie is just kind of obnoxious. She thinks she deserves to know everything about everyone, and she's not afraid to act like she knows everything about something that she's never experienced before. They are two characters that I definitely want to dedicate videos to at some point, but for now, it's just important that we establish an understanding of them as characters in a more general kind of sense. On top of shining an interesting light on Ginger's friend group, this one also gave us an interesting look at her emotional side as it pertains to boys that she likes. In this one, she's intrigued at the idea of a foreign boy liking her, however, deep down, she's focused on her current crush, Ian Richton. She even brings him up to Jean-Pierre while they're on the chairlift, having him be the topic of part of their small talk. This episode was the first one that really gave us a good look at Ginger's potential love interests, and it really set the scene for how complicated her love life would eventually end up being. That's one thing that's really tough about being in middle school. That awkward preteen going into teen age comes along with a lot of confusing feelings that can be hard to navigate as a kid. In a sense, As Told by Ginger is an amazing show as it shines a light on what it's like to tackle the complexities of those feelings and all of the moving parts that come along with them. The symbolism of this episode, though, is massive. Ginger ends up being pressured into something that she wasn't very comfortable with. All of this comes to be at the result of Courtney and Miranda deciding to manipulate people for their own entertainment. Ginger ends up being made to feel like she wasn't good enough because she didn't have enough experience because, according to Courtney, a boy like Jean-Pierre expects a more advanced girl. That was just awful and gross through and through. The entire sentiment behind what Courtney was saying is just so awful, and it's something that, as a person, I've seen firsthand throughout my entire life. It's disgusting how people can shame others like this, and I'm proud of As Told by Ginger for tackling this the way that it did, because this is a real thing. It doesn't just go one way either. Boys are put down by other boys all the time in a similar kind of regard. In all reality, gender goes completely out the window when it comes to this kind of thing because cruel people do this to others regardless of their gender identity. All things considered, this one really said a lot about Courtney and Miranda. It really painted a picture of them that's important to keep in mind literally throughout the rest of these next few videos in this series. Courtney is a weird one. She's pretty much infatuated with Ginger, even going as far as coining the term gingerisms as it pertains to things that Ginger does which Courtney likes. Courtney kind of obsesses over Ginger sometimes, however, all in all, she doesn't really have Ginger's best interest at heart, ever. The reason behind that, of course, is because A, Courtney puts herself above everyone else, always, and B, Courtney sees Ginger as less than her, especially on the social hierarchy that exists in Courtney's mind. Meanwhile, Miranda, on the other hand, is just kind of a spiteful and mean person down to her core. She's specifically mean to Ginger directly because of Courtney being obsessed with her. Miranda, overall, is very territorial over Courtney. As Courtney's best friend, she feels threatened by Ginger's existence because Courtney likes Ginger so much. It's an interesting dynamic that I feel like could also be explored further in the future for sure. There's a lot to kind of unpack there. There's many other episodes in this series that build upon Courtney's odd fixation with Ginger. In this one, it starts out with Courtney talking about Ginger's charm being contagious, and it builds up to her basically forcing Ginger into a corner with a strange boy who she barely knows. As far as Courtney and Miranda are concerned in the context of this episode, to them, all of this is a game, and it was just really heinous to witness. This really encapsulates the mean spirit of many people. There's a lot of people that you may come across in life who are like this, and I'm glad that As Told by Ginger took the time to point this out and touch on this topic especially. There are many people in life who use others for their own entertainment in a really toxic and manipulative way. Things like this are important for kids to see, as it's something they need to be wary of, especially heading into middle and high school. Furthermore, I have to touch a little bit on Jean-Pierre. This kid is just something else. He's like a little Pepe Le Pew kind of. The way he was talking to Courtney and Miranda about how girls are his weakness, pretty much drooling over Ginger as well as that random girl that just walked by. Then, of course, on the chairlift, he was pretty much ignoring Ginger's small talk and was basically trying to force himself on her while she was very visibly scared. I mean, obviously, you could tell that Ginger was petrified from being stuck high up on that chairlift, but on top of that, the pressure of having to French kiss this boy by multiple people was clearly not helping. As far as Jean-Pierre is concerned, I'm like, kid, learn to read the room. Ginger was clearly not having a good time, and this kid really just didn't care. All he was focused on was his own wants, and his behavior was just really awkward and weird. Moving on from there, and kind of circling back to an earlier point that I made, this episode shined a really interesting light on Ginger's friend group. Specifically though, circling back to Darren. We see him approach while Ginger and her friends are eating lunch, and he ends up adding an opinion to the conversation that you can tell Ginger really values. Ginger and Darren have been close since they were really young. He's lived next door to her for years, and as a result, she's built a very near and dear bond with him. This episode is an interesting one because it's the first one I can remember that really kind of felt like it was hinting at something between the two of them. This episode revolved a lot around Ginger's fears and her potential love life, but not as it pertains to Darren whatsoever. Up to this point in the series, we've seen her interact with Darren, but always in a friend capacity. She sees Darren almost like a brother and hasn't ever really taken the time to think of him any different than that. However, if you look into it a little further, there was a lot of foreshadowing in this one. Throughout the whole thing, Ginger was stressed about skiing and stressed about kissing Jean-Pierre. However, when it came down to it, sure, the kiss didn't happen, but she did end up tackling the skiing head on. She faced her fears and ended up having fun in the process as she bombed down the mountain. Nevertheless, in the end, the journey ended up leading her to Darren. If you're familiar with the course of this show and where it ends up going, then you'd know that the symbolism here is definitely worth reading into. We see her up on the chair, scared about kissing and skiing, and then she overcomes her fear and falls right into Darren. Then, of course, from there, the cherry on top is the scene in the end where they're on the bus and they put an emphasis on zooming in on Ginger signing his cast with a pink pen, and she takes the time to circle back and dot her I with a little heart. This, to me, really felt like them foreshadowing possible things to come between the two of them. However, the potential relationship between them would be one that has a slow burn kind of build-up. It wouldn't be until a little bit later in season 1 that we would see them expand upon that potential relationship. This would happen in the episode called Dare I Darren. This episode starts out with Ginger in science class as class comes to a start. We see Ginger teasing Darren a bit, playing keep away with his notebook. The teacher tells the class to settle down as he's about to show them a film about a main character that they can all relate to.
You and your pituitary gland. A match made in heaven.
Ooh, movies can be very romantic, even in the context of a classroom. Maybe you should try to sit next to Ian.
We then cut on over to Carl's classroom, where his teacher, Mrs. Gordon, is talking about one of her past students who grew up to be a world-renowned doctor. Carl chimes in about how him and Hoodsey are gonna get world famous too, which causes Brandon Hixby to chime in as well.
Have you ever
a student whose adorable little pet became famous? Because sometimes if your pet's really, really adorable and special, it can get famous.
Forget it, Brandon. Your stupid monkey isn't ever going to be famous for anything, except being stupid.
You and Hootsie are already famous for that.
Carl then decides to make a bet with Brandon that him and Hoodsie are going to get famous by the end of the week, putting Brandon's pet monkey on the line. The two shake on it, and we cut to later on when class gets out. Mrs. Gordon stops them on the way out, saying that Blake Gripling is out sick. She asks them to deliver his homework to him, and the two begrudgingly agree. We then cut on back to Ginger's class, still sitting through a documentary about the pituitary gland. We see Darren make a paper football and flick it over to Ginger, who starts laughing a ton when she opens it, getting the attention of their teacher.
Hey, kids! The pituitary deserves your silence and respect.
Sorry, Mr. Celia. We're really sorry.
Check out Ginger and Braceface. They're practically flirting.
You wish.
Certainly would make things easier for me and Ian.
Later on, class gets out and Ginger goes separate ways with her friends as they go to different classes. On her way down the hall, Miranda stops her, saying that her and Darren make a cute couple.
Darren? My boyfriend? Are you crazy? We're like total pals. He's my neighbor. I mean, I've known him forever.
Friends first is the foolproof formula for relationship success. All the best couples start out that way. At least that's what Dr. Fond Feelings says. I watch your infomercials.
There you have it. And Dr. Fond Feelings is never wrong.
Never?
After that, we see Hoodsie and Carl arriving at Blake's house. When they approach, Carl is delighted to see a super nice telescope sitting on the porch, waiting to be opened. Carl tells Hoodsie that they can use it to discover something cool like a comet and then name it after themselves, which will automatically make them world famous. However, Hoodsie doubts that getting Blake to let them use it is going to be an easy mission. Carl, though, is confident that he'll be able to use Blake's homework as leverage.
Cheerio, old bean. I'd hope to snag a word with Master Blake. Is he about?
Terribly sorry, I'm afraid. He's not in. He's fallen ill and remains hospitalized at this very moment.
Is he okay? I mean, what happened?
It's his blasted tonsils. They've plagued him ever since he was a tiny tot.
Carl explains to Winston that a tonsillectomy is no big deal and that his mom is a nurse who helps people recover from them all the time. This makes Winston feel a lot better about the whole situation, and he happily tells the boys that they should go visit Blake at the hospital. Carl hands over his homework and the two of them carry on. As soon as they hit the steps though, Hoodsie calls Carl out, questioning why he gave up Blake's homework, to which Carl explains that they don't need to do any of that now because they can just borrow his telescope without asking.
That's a total violation of the new toy code.
What new toy code?
And I quote, "No decent human shall play with another man's toy until the new toy recipient has had the opportunity to play with it himself, especially without asking." You wrote it, circa second grade.
It's totally archaic.
Hoodsie argues with him, saying that they have to get Blake's consent, to which Carl reluctantly agrees, and just like that, we cut over to Ginger and Darren, who are getting ready to ride home on Darren's bike.
So you're never gonna guess what Miranda said about us today. It's really funny.
What'd she say?
Ian? What are you doing here? Whoa. Whoa.
In Ginger's daydream, she flies through the clouds on the handlebars, and she looks down to see herself riding on Darren's bike.
Hey, you guys make a really cute couple. We do?
Over here.
Thanks for showing me the way, Miranda.
Ginger wakes up to Carl and Hoodsie going through her room. She asks what they're doing, and Carl says that he's looking for some nice paper to make a get well card for their friend. Ginger forks over some nice cardstock, and she kicks them out.
exactly like my brother.
Mind taking some dictation? Your penmanship is a lot better than...
Out! Maybe not exactly like my brother.
We then cut right on over to Ginger at Macy's house with her and Dodie as she tells them all about the dream that she had. Macy tries to psychoanalyze the fine details of the dream, such as her flying into Darren's tooth, but Dodie interrupts, saying that sometimes the details aren't important, but it's more the feeling that you get from the overall vibe of the dream that matters. She asks Ginger about how she felt through the dream.
I felt happy.
Happy? Oh, Ginger has the total hots for Darren. I always knew something like this would happen. I swear I did.
And Dr. Fond Feeling says all the most successful couples start out as friends first.
Dr. Fond Feelings. Love to know where she studied.
We then cut over to lunch where Ginger and her friends are staring at Darren as he gets his lunch. Ginger asks about how her hair looks as Macy laments the idea of Ginger and Darren becoming a couple, saying that nothing will ever be the same. Ginger tries to argue, saying that if anything happened between her and Darren, the four of them would still be tight as ever, hoping that Dodie would have her back on that. However, even she doesn't have any high hopes about the situation. Just then, Darren sits down and right away, the four of them are just acting strange and staring at him funny. Darren questions why they're all smiling, and they just sweep it under the rug. Darren tries to change the subject, bringing up a new movie that's premiering this weekend, and saying that his brother is working at the theater.
And he can get us 4 tickets to the matinee, no waiting in line or anything.
All 4 of us, huh?
Sounds terrific.
Terrific? You guys are acting weird. I'm going back for more corn.
Save your seat, D. Okay? Why am I suddenly acting like such a spaz?
Just then, Ginger's crush, Ian Richton, walks up to talk to them, asking if they're going to be going to the movie this weekend. Ginger quickly says yeah, and pretty much brushes him off, seeming like she has little to no interest in him anymore. This, you can tell, rubs Ian the wrong way a little bit, as he decides to walk off.
Did you see that? Ginger practically snubbed Ian Richton.
What do you want to bet she's dwelling on Metal Man? Fatley is so pliable, and Ian Richton will so belong to me.
At Ginger's house later on, we see Dodie and Macy talking to Ginger. Dodie seems to think that this is pretty much a date, so she insists that her and Macy don't tag along because she doesn't want them to get in the way. This leaves Ginger feeling frustrated because Darren invited all 3 of them.
Seems like just yesterday we were a squadron of sorts.
It was just yesterday.
We should get going. Don't get up. We'll show ourselves out.
If you feel like calling to tell me what happened when it's all over, I'll be home.
After that, we cut to the hospital where Carl and Hoodsy are being directed to Blake's room by Carl's mom. With turnips in hand, we see them head into Blake's hospital room to convince him to let them use the telescope. They lay over the edge of his bed, trying to talk to Blake, who is seemingly still napping as he recovers from his surgery.
Up and at 'em! Hey, hi there!
Oh. There's our Blake. Good morning, friend. Hello there. Hi.
Shh. Don't say anything. You need your strength.
Carl asks Blake if he needs to borrow a mason jar to keep his tonsils in, but he's shocked to find out that Blake didn't keep his tonsils. Carl assures him that since his mom works here, he'll pull some strings to make sure that Blake can get them back.
That sure is nice of you, Carl. Why, it seems like you would do just about anything for Blake.
Well, we should probably get going. You need your rest. Bless you, son. Oh, say, I almost forgot. You don't suppose Hoodsy and I could borrow your new high-powered telescope this weekend? We have a big science project due, and what with you in the hospital and all. No.
Carl and Hoodsy walk out of the room feeling defeated. They head to go wait for Carl's mom in the nurse's lounge, but they take a wrong turn, finding themselves in a room full of body parts and jars. While that's going on, we see Ginger getting ready for the movies.
Hi, Darren.
Hi. Hey, what's with the skirt?
Oh, my pants were all dirty.
Bummer. So I guess you don't want to ride bikes to the theater then, huh?
I guess not.
All right, well, let's bolt. Hey, we can catch the bus or something. Where's Dodie and Macy?
Oh, they couldn't make it. It's just gonna be us. Hope you don't mind.
Why would I mind?
That is so sweet, you big sweetie.
A little while later, we cut on over to the movie theater where a ton of people are in line. However, the guy at the box office is in the middle of putting up a sold out sign. Over on the side of the theater, Darren's brother is basically making him and Ginger shower him with compliments in exchange for the tickets. They grab them and begin to head on in.
2 extras since Dodie and Macy bailed.
Lucky you. Everyone else got sold out.
Want them?
You mean I can just have them?
Yeah, me and Ginger don't really need 4 seats.
Good deal. I know just who to invite.
Inside the theater, we see Ginger and Darren approach the concession stand. She says that she's going to be getting the snacks since Darren's the one who got the tickets. They order a large popcorn and a pink lemonade to share.
1 straw or 2?
1.
2.
Oh, Ginger. If you're heading into the theater, would you mind saving me and Ian seats? Then we could all sit together. It'll be fun. Kind of like a double date.
You mean you and Ian?
Just 1 straw, please.
Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Hoodsy and Carl are in awe at all of the body parts surrounding them. Hoodsy approaches a cart and finds Blake's tonsils in a jar, just waiting to be claimed. Not too long after, we cut right on over to Carl and Hoodsy walking in on Blake, who's enjoying some ice cream and a live violin serenade. Carl tells him not to sweat the telescope thing because they found a perfect consolation prize in his tonsils. They tell Blake to call if he wants to discuss visitation rights, and the 2 of them walk out of Blake's hospital room. Just like that, we cut back on over to the movie theater where Miranda and Ian are taking their seats by Ginger and Darren.
Just so you know, when a movie's really scary, sometimes if you hold hands with the person you're sitting next to, it makes it less scary.
Says who?
The lights dim and the movie starts as we see everybody completely enthralled by this vampire hunter movie. Ginger finds herself in a weird spot between Darren and Ian where she's accidentally bumping hands with Darren while eating popcorn and bumping elbows with Ian while he hogs the armrest.
This is getting really scary.
Not so fast, Harley.
This is the perfect time to... Ginger, what exactly do you think you're doing?
I don't know. It must be my pituitary gland.
Ginger, wait!
Darren runs out of the theater, following Ginger. He sees her sitting on a staircase nearby, and he walks up asking her what's been going on with her. She apologizes to Darren and tells him that they need to talk.
It's like this. I had this really confusing dream about you.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And it kind of made me wonder if maybe we were more than just friends.
You mean...
Yeah?
You and me?
Right?
Boyfriend and...
Correct, Darren. Yeah.
So that's why you were acting so strange.
Darren stops and takes a second to think about how he's about to respond. He tells Ginger that to him, they're definitely more than just friends. They're best friends.
I don't know. You're like family to me, Ginger.
I feel that way too. But people keep insisting that we make this great couple.
People. Besides, the world might actually stop spinning if you gave up on Ian Richton. Now, wait, was it my imagination, or were you holding his hand in there?
After that, we see this episode come to an end with Carl and Hoodsy sitting in Carl's doghouse, feeling accomplished. The 2 of them revel in the fact that they obtained Blake's tonsils, feeling like this is leagues better than any monkey. Now, fresh off the heels of this episode, I have so many mixed feelings. You all know more than anything that I'm a sucker for a show with an overarching story. As Told by Ginger is a show that captured an overarching story unlike any other cartoon that exists in the Nicktoons roster. We're talking character and relationship progression that spans multiple seasons, like you'd see more commonly in a live-action show like Zoe 101 or iCarly. However, having this kind of continuity in the form of an animated cartoon just lands in such a more special way than it does in live action, in my opinion. The more you watch this cartoon, the more context you get, the more details arise, and the further it concretes your understanding of these characters. All of that combines together to really make it a believable portrayal of what's being shown on screen. One thing I truly value is how this show did a great job of explaining why certain characters behave a certain way and how the domino effect of their actions affect the actions of other characters by proximity. One example I brought up earlier is Courtney's obsession with Ginger. There's episodes that explain why Courtney is that way to an extent, but as a result of her being that way, Miranda ends up hating Ginger by default because her best friend has this weird obsession with her. Not like that's Ginger's fault at all, but to a cunning person like Miranda, she can easily see a kind of soft-spoken person like Ginger as an easy target. That, combined with Courtney's obsession fueling the fire, Miranda ends up full-blown instigating problems for Ginger more often than not. That's definitely something that we can dig a lot more into directly in a future video, but for now, it's without a doubt a big part of laying the foundation of this show's premise. This episode peeled back the layers a bit more as far as Miranda is concerned, and it really showed us that there's further meaning to her hatred of Ginger outside of Courtney's obsession. Of course, we know by this point in the series that Ginger has a huge crush on Ian Richton, but it's not known until this episode that Miranda also has a crush on Ian, which of course is just bad news for Ginger ultimately. Honestly, based on the scene at the lunch table where Ian walked up and was trying to talk with Ginger and her friends, it's safe to say that Ian might actually have an interest in Ginger by this point, but it's not fully certain. He did seem really happy to be talking to her, and pretty frustrated when Ginger wasn't reciprocating his interest. Meanwhile, Miranda was incredibly satisfied to be in Ginger's head and pretty much causing her to just kind of forget about him. Of course, Miranda, being the territorial person that she is, vows that Ian will be hers, which just furthermore worsens her negative intentions towards Ginger. Us learning about Miranda's feelings in this episode adds another entire world of context as to why Miranda feels the way she does about Ginger. Miranda, all things considered, is a very angry and spiteful girl. She's the kind of girl who went out of her way to rub Ian in Ginger's face after blatantly getting in Ginger's head about Darren. I guess more than anything, this reflects a lot about how Miranda really is just so malicious to her core. Outside of getting more context about Miranda's situation though, this episode really showed us a lot about Ginger and her inner feelings towards Darren. I feel like there genuinely was so much foreshadowing how Ginger really feels deep down inside, and it's made pretty clear through her dream. She's dreaming about riding on Darren's handlebars as he takes them both home, but then he turns into Ian Richton, which leaves her confused considering that she's torn between the two at this moment. Then of course those handlebars detach and she's on her own. She isn't being guided by anyone but herself as she soars through the clouds. Then she flies past herself as she rides on Darren's handlebars, and she tells herself and Darren that they make a really cute couple. Then of course she flies into school and thanks Miranda for showing her the way, which in the end was Darren. This right here, more than anything, reaffirms for us that deep down inside, Ginger really has feelings for Darren as more than a friend. If that isn't enough for you, then need I bring up her sudden lack of interest in Ian Richton when she started having romantic feelings for Darren? Like I said, Ian straight up walked up and tried to talk to her, and she just couldn't have been less interested whatsoever. At face value, it's something to easily not want to read further into. But if you think about it, this really does say a lot. In the last episode we checked out, we saw Ginger writing in her diary about how exciting it would be to explore things with Jean-Pierre. However, she also said that she was feeling conflicted about how Ian Richton would feel about it. I mean, this was just a few episodes before this one in the series. When Jean-Pierre was suddenly an option, Ginger was genuinely worried about how it would affect the potential of her and Ian being a thing. Meanwhile, in this episode, she couldn't have cared less about how Ian feels. This, to me, really said a lot about Ginger's feelings for Darren deep down inside. I think somewhere inside of Ginger, this is where she realized that she actually does have feelings for him. Sure, by the end of the episode, they played it off like it wasn't a thing, but deep down, I'd imagine that Ginger might know that she really does like him as more than just a friend. For us as viewers too, especially watching this as a kid, I don't know about you, but this episode gave me a lot of hope. When I saw Ginger and Darren have this interaction on the stairs when I was younger, I wanted more than anything for him to reciprocate how she felt, but that didn't happen. When I was younger, I didn't really understand what had happened here, but looking back as an adult, I'm feeling a lot about how they're portraying Darren at this point in the series. First things first, we don't know if he has feelings for Ginger. We don't know if he has feelings for anyone for that matter. He's not really had the opportunity to show any romantic feelings for anyone by this point in the series. However, we do know that he's portrayed as being a really good friend to Ginger at this point. He's consistently there for her when she needs a friend. The two of them practically grew up together and still are growing up together. Darren is shown to be a reliable friend to her time and time again throughout this series, but especially in this season. With that in mind though, Darren being who he is at this point, it doesn't really matter to him if he does have feelings for Ginger or not. He knows that she doesn't need another guy to complicate things right now. She needs a friend who's gonna be there for her. Him and Ginger have a really special bond that's something that he genuinely respects and values. Darren doesn't want to ruin that or put it in jeopardy. At this point, Ginger has really strong feelings for Ian Richton, and Darren knows that. He also knows that as a friend, it's better for him to support Ginger through these feelings and be there to support her rather than swoop in while she's in a vulnerable state. This says a lot about Darren, and it's a really interesting development in his story. Us seeing him be there for Ginger as a friend in her time of need really reaffirms to us as viewers where he stands with her at this point in the series. He cares about Ginger and wants her to be happy more than anything. I will say this much though. What Miranda said about that psychologist who talked about great relationships being built upon the foundation of a friendship really is something that has some substance to it in my opinion. It's important to be friends with your other half first and foremost. Sure, opposites attract, and that's okay, but having common interests and building a friendship certainly doesn't hurt the foundation of any stable relationship. Ginger and Darren have a very special friendship, and it makes my heart happy to know how much both of them value each other. As this series progresses, we would see the relationship between them change in a very massive way. But as far as the rest of Season 1 goes, Darren is shown being there for Ginger through thick and thin, and the writers of the show do a really great job of showing us how strong their friendship really is at its core. The next episode we're going to check out is another one that not only showcases more of the friendship that exists between Ginger and Darren, but it also plays kind of a pivotal role in Ginger's romantic interests. We're looking at the episode called The A-Ticket. This episode starts out during lunch at Lucky Junior High. Ginger and her friends are going through the lunch line, talking about how they're about to see their new semester class schedules, as Dodie has high hopes not to get Mr. Celia for chemistry.
But Mr. Celia's the greatest.
Only a science whiz would say that. The rest of us would say he's the toughest.
I'm not a science whiz.
You're like Mr. Celia's class pet.
I'm not.
How's my favorite student of all time?
Hoping I get you for chemistry, Mr. Celia.
Oh.
What?
They all sit down and open their schedules. As Darren joins them, we find out that both Ginger and Darren got Mr. Celia for chemistry class. Just then, Ian Richton walks up, warning Darren not to eat the school hot dogs.
Too late, bro.
My good friend here went for the mac and cheese, didn't you, Ginger?
Like the jacket. I get to keep it, too. As long as I maintain a B average, I stay on the team. So they're finally cracking down on the jocks. It's gonna happen sooner or later.
As Ian walks away, Ginger totally spaces out, infatuated with him. Dodie tells Ginger that she needs to stop gawking over Ian and make a move already. Darren offers to see if maybe he can find out if Ian likes her or not, but Ginger turns him down. Just like that, we cut right on over to Carl and Hoodsy in band class. The teacher brings class to an end, and we see him approach the two.
You guys ever hear of Ludlow Krantz?
Black eye patch,
A fake leg he keeps stuff in?
6 fingers on his right hand. He's my idol.
Same here. Not possible.
Well, the guy went to school here, even played glockenspiel in the band. Which is, I'm guessing, why you guys are in the band playing the glockenspiel.
He's my gold standard, Mr. H.
Their teacher explains that Ludlow Krantz went to school at Lucky Elementary and that he's really sentimental about it. He tells them that he even wrote a glockenspiel solo, which one of them is gonna get to play for him. The teacher tells the 3 of them that since it's a solo part, the 3 of them are each gonna have to audition individually, which leaves Carl feeling mixed about having to go up against his best friend Hoodsy. After that, we cut over to Mr. Celia's chemistry class coming to a start as he begins pairing people up to be lab partners.
Chemistry happens between people as well as chemicals. Hooking up with someone new may force you to think outside the box.
Miranda, what if we don't end up together? Miranda?
Okay, how about we try Dodie Bishop and Courtney Grippling?
Dodie basically loses her mind as Courtney pretty much begs to renegotiate her partner. Meanwhile, Miranda, much to her own dismay, gets paired with Macy. Ginger, on the other hand, is shocked when she gets paired with none other than Ian Richton.
Yes, yes, yes!
Ooh, I think chemistry is my new favorite subject.
Later on, we see the jocks in the locker room talking. Ian is having a conversation with one of his friends who's really worried for him that he got the toughest chemistry teacher in the whole school. Ian, however, says he isn't worried for a second because he has Ginger as a lab partner.
She's my A ticket.
Later on, we see Carl and Hoodsy practicing with their glockenspiels in Carl's doghouse. Carl pretty much tells Hoodsy that he has to be the noble loser because Carl is just obsessed with Ludlow Krantz. He even has this painting of him that he found near the school's dumpster.
Their most famous graduate. The guy who built an airplane out of tongue depressors. The guy who invented an aftershave that smells like feet. The guy I want to be when I grow up.
Well, I want to be him too.
You don't have 6 fingers.
Neither do you.
A minor detail I'm working on. The thing is, we can't both win the solo. That's why they call it a solo. Dig?
Hoodsy gets offended at Carl's insinuation that he doesn't understand what a solo is, and we see him storm off, more or less telling Carl, may the best man win. After that, we cut on over to Dodie, who's talking to Macy, donning a new kind of business-looking attire in an attempt to impress her new lab partner, Courtney. Nearby, Ginger is feeling mixed feelings about Ian, thinking that he might not be excited about being lab partners in the same way that she is.
Hey, Ginger. I just wanted to tell you I'm really looking forward to chemistry class. Nice shirt.
Not only did Ian Richton stop at your locker, a sure sign of major interest, but he complimented your outfit. This has class couple written all over it.
Ginger talks about how she's freaked out by all this, even though she's wanted it for years now. Just then, we see Courtney and Miranda walk up and greet Ginger and her friends. She asks Ginger what kind of magic she's worked on Ian because she's never seen him so taken with any one specific person.
I didn't do anything. That's kind of the amazing part.
Of course. Playing hard to get. How advanced. Well, I'm in your court. Just give a shout if you need anything. Gee, Courtney, I'm not sure you were helpful enough.
Later on in chemistry class, we see everyone getting ready to start. Courtney walks up and basically tells Ginger that she needs to take her goggles off if she wants Ian to notice her. Instead, she gives Ginger a pair of pretty pink goggles to make her look more cute. We see her give Ginger a nice wink and continue on her way before proceeding to just completely ignore Dodie.
Okay, guy at opinion. Darren, how do you think Ginger looks? Good enough to send the signal to Ian she likes him as much as he likes her?
Come on, guys. You know I'm not good with stuff like that.
Class begins, and all of the students begin preparing for their experiments. As Ginger and Ian get started, it doesn't take long for her to realize that he's basically clueless. He even tries to light the Bunsen burner with the gas turned off. Class continues as Ian is basically sitting back and staring super close at Ginger's notes, which gives Courtney the impression that he's staring at Ginger because he likes her.
Not yet, it's too soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I thought you'd never call. Did you see what's going on over...
Miranda, don't you find it interesting that Ginger stays Ginger even when she's talking to Ian, a guy she's crazy about?
What's so impressive about that?
Well, when you're around a guy you like, your voice gets all tight, and you kind of freeze, and you make up stuff about yourself. Face it, Miranda, you freak.
That is so not true.
As that's happening, we see Macy equip a gas mask as she learns the hard way that Miranda was right about it being too soon for the chemical that she added. Much to Miranda's dismay, Courtney continues to gush about how obsessed she is with her Gingerisms. Over at Ginger and Ian's table, we see her basically holding Ian's hand through the entire experiment as he has no idea what's even going on.
Think we have enough notes?
Do you want to take some?
But you're so good at it. What?
Broken glass, nobody move.
As that's all happening, we see Carl, Hoodsy, and Brandon standing behind curtains as they each audition for the solo piece that they're all hoping to land. The three of them each play their rendition, however, much to Carl and Hoodsy's dismay, Brandon ends up winning. The teacher informs him that as the winner, he'll get to play the solo for Ludlow Krantz tomorrow after school, then he'll get to go to his house for tea.
Carl, I know we're not speaking, but... doesn't seem fair that Brandon won when we're the ones who worship the ground Ludlow Krantz spits on, does it? I mean, if it were the good old days, we'd never let something like that happen, would we?
Sure wouldn't, Hoods.
After all that, we cut on over to the lunchroom where Ginger and Ian are hanging out and talking about science. She's teaching him all about the bond that forms between ice and salt and how you can attach a string to lift the ice with the resulting bond. Ian acts like he's super interested and he pulls Ginger's notebook out of his bag, thanking her for letting him copy them. He uses being super busy with practice as his excuse as to why he didn't get the work done himself.
Actually, I've been pretty busy myself, but I get the work done.
I know. I gotta be more like you and less like me. Ginger, look, I gotta tell you something. See...
Oh, Ginger, you were so perfect!
Oh, wait, guys. Darren needs to tell me something.
Gotta go.
He's been acting so strange lately.
After that, we cut on over to the auditorium where Brandon is performing his solo for Mr. Krantz. Partway into it, the stage floods with smoke, and Hoodsy and Carl crash Brandon's performance, scaring him with a hologram.
You two freakazoids! I should have known you'd do something weird like this! Why can't you be a normal, good boy like me?
Hoods, I think we've just been insulted.
Yep, that's us. Freakazoids.
What did you call these young men, Mr. Higsby?
Brandon starts to backpedal, realizing that he offended Mr. Krantz by insinuating that anyone who's different is a freak. Just then, Mr. Krantz collapses.
Quick, Hoods! Brandon, get out! No! Everything is too weird! I'm out of here! I'm a good boy! A good boy!
We killed him, Carl!
Just then, while Carl and Hoodsy panic, Ludlow sticks his arm up and puts his finger in Carl's ear. The three have a good laugh when they realize that he was faking it the entire time just to freak out Brandon.
What was that yellow concoction you sprinkled on the obsequious tyke?
My eye goo collection.
Fascinating.
As that's happening, we cut back over to the chemistry room where Mr. Celia is completely blown away by Ginger and Ian's performance, calling them the most successful lab duo in years. Ian is incredibly thankful for Ginger for helping him secure an A, as he tries to think of a way to repay her.
I know. Go ahead, try it on. Fits great. Was getting kind of small for me anyhow.
Yeah, I saw.
Later on, Ginger is walking home with Macy and Dodie as the three of them speculate the meaning behind Ian giving Ginger his jacket. Just then, Darren rides by on his bike, seeming to be ignoring them, but the three of them call for him to stop. When he does, Dodie excitedly walks right up to him and tells him that Ginger and Ian are now officially an item set in stone by him giving her his jacket.
And I wouldn't read too much into it if I were you.
You should be happy for me. You know how I feel about Ian.
Look, Ginger, the only reason he's psyched that you're his partner is because you're a science whiz. I heard him talking. And he's calling you his A ticket so he'll get to stay on the team. I'm really sorry, Ginger.
We cut to Ginger's house where the soccer jacket sits on the ground. Ginger confides in her friends that it's not so much the fact that he used her. She's upset about the fact that he doesn't see her as anything more than just some science whiz. Dodie and Macy ask her what she's gonna do, wondering if she's gonna give him his jacket back. However, Ginger says that she has a better idea. She plans to instead just stop doing all the work next class so that she can expose Ian and let him know what it's like to be taken as a fool.
Hey, you knew sooner or later there'd be an in-class practical exam. And did I mention this is 15% of your overall grade?
We see the class get started, and Ginger tells Ian to set everything up and she'll watch. Ian then proceeds to struggle, and Ginger just kind of sits back watching him have a hard time as the clock continues to tick away all of their time. She then proceeds to point out everything that he's doing wrong, including the fact that he still has yet to light the Bunsen burner.
We'll fail.
You mean you'll fail? Isn't that what you're worried about? Staying on the team?
No, Okay, yeah. I needed a good grade to keep playing soccer.
So you figured I'd get it for you? If you'd just been honest with me right from the start, I wouldn't be so mad. I mean, when we got teamed up, the way you reacted, I thought you really...
You thought I really what?
We're low on saline. Mind if we borrow?
Ginger tries to give Ian the soccer jacket back, but he insists that she keep it, saying that she's been a pretty tough coach to him. She thanks him and decides that they both need to work as a team if they're gonna pass this assignment in time.
He wants her to keep the jacket. Can you believe it? I'd look way better in that jacket than she ever will.
Heads up, acid splash. Wow, good thing you're wearing boots.
Oh, my new boots.
After all that, we cut on over to Carl and Hoodsey as they approach Ludlow Krantz's house. They ring his rope pull doorbell, which triggers a trapdoor, sending them flying down below. We then see them waiting in his study, anticipating him to call them in for tea.
Where do you think he is? I'm hungry.
Hold on, Hoods. I got this funny feeling.
Shall I ring for tea, gentlemen?
Yes! Oh, so cool.
This is an episode that really has me feeling mixed on all levels. First of all, given the fact that this video is meant to focus around Ginger and Darren and kind of the development that leads towards their friendship turning into a relationship, I definitely want to start with him and his role here. This one is a great example of Darren and how he looks out for Ginger as a friend. Them looking out for each other plays a really important role in their friendship. He's always there for Ginger emotionally, like previously stated, but in this one, he was there to look out for her as it pertained to Ian using her. The tough part is, though, he didn't want to hurt her feelings. However, he knew that he needed to tell her the truth. That is such a hard line to walk as a friend, especially considering the specific dynamic that exists between Ginger and Darren, as well as the hypothetical romance that could potentially exist as well. It's never easy to tell somebody something that they don't want to hear, especially when that person is a close friend of yours who has really high hopes. It's hard to have to deliver news that's gonna break someone's spirit a bit, but furthermore, it's even harder to have to do that in front of other people who have just as high of hopes. This is a tough one because Darren tried to talk to Ginger about this one-on-one, which clearly was the most comfortable way for him to have this conversation in his mind. I mean, he didn't want to embarrass Ginger in front of her other friends, and he was trying to be mindful about when that conversation occurred between them. However, he was more or less robbed of that opportunity. Dodie and Macy showed up out of nowhere the first time he tried to do it, and from there, they basically forced him to talk about the whole situation when he was riding home, which you could tell he really didn't want to do. Now, by all means, he could have kept the conversation for later in the day. Odds are they would have reached a point where he could have come up to Ginger's window like he always does, and he could have had a one-on-one chat with her about it then. That obviously would have been the smart and sensible thing to do. With that in mind, though, we're talking about a bunch of middle schoolers, and of course, they aren't exactly known for being the most smart or sensible, being oftentimes driven by emotions first and foremost. For Darren, this is as much as an emotional conversation as it is for Ginger, and I can definitely understand where he's coming from in not wanting to have this conversation in front of Dodie and Macy. Within this conversation, though, just the overall tone and flow of everything, I have such mixed emotions. First of all, I was feeling really shocked by how cold Darren seemed and how he was approaching Ginger about being gifted the jacket by Ian. It seemed like he was mad at Ginger with how he was being towards her. But the thing is, though, deep down inside, he isn't mad at her. He's obviously mad at Ian. He's mad at Ian because he's using somebody that he truly cares a lot about. Meanwhile, all Ian has to do is just look at her a certain way to get her to do whatever he wants, and he knows that. That's why he does those confusing and manipulative things like giving her his jacket. He wants his easy A, and he thinks he's hot stuff, so in his mind, Ginger is just a variable, really. She could have been any girl who's good at science, and he probably would have tried to behave the same way, sending kind of a mixed signal on purpose in hopes of getting a passing grade because sports are really all this guy cares about at the end of the day. I totally recognize that at this point, Darren was completely misplacing his frustrations and treating Ginger really badly as a result. After all, she's the one who's being used by Ian in this whole situation. So with that being said, -1 respect point for Darren in that regard. I also have to point out the face he made when Ginger said that he should be happy for her because he knows how she feels about Ian. This face just felt really telling of the fact that he might be dealing with some other feelings inside, contrary to what he had said to Ginger at the end of the last episode that we checked out. This one is a double-edged sword. In a lot of ways, I get the feeling that Darren is holding back his potential feelings for Ginger so that she can focus on Ian. For Darren, this is an internal struggle on multiple fronts. It's a mix of him caring about Ginger and not wanting to burst her bubble because he knows how excited she is about the idea of Ian potentially liking her back. Then, of course, the internal struggle that comes along with him having had tried to have this conversation one-on-one already, but having been interrupted by Dodie and Macy. Then, of course, when we throw in the fact that he could potentially be having romantic feelings for Ginger deep down inside that he doesn't want to admit, it all really just compiles into the ultimate storm of raging teenage boy emotional turmoil. Meanwhile, for Ginger, this right here is kind of a big turning point. Up to this point in the series, it's made clear how Ginger feels about Ian Richton. She's had a crush on him since the start of the show, and it's been established that the crush had existed for years now. What's really sad about all of this is the fact that she wasn't even upset that Ian had used her. She said it herself when she was talking to Dodie and Macy. It wasn't that fact that hurt the most, it's the fact that he doesn't feel the same way about her as she does about him. She's frustrated that he just sees her as some science nerd and not really who she is as a person. This right here is a very valid feeling, and it's also a really accurate portrayal of middle school emotions. The age that Ginger and her friends are at is a very formative and sensitive time where a lot of people tend to learn a lot about themselves emotionally. This is a really confusing and hard age to conquer for a lot of people. At this age, a lot of us just really long to fit in and to be liked by everybody. Along with that comes the territory of sometimes overlooking wrongdoings because those seem to be a minor molehill in comparison to the mountain of that person not liking you in the first place. At that age, someone not liking you for whatever reason can be a big pill to swallow. Like Ginger said, that was the part for her that really hurt the most. Ultimately though, to me, this was kind of a big point for her to realize that Ian Richton isn't really the guy he's chalked up to be. That's something that's definitely to be expanded upon at some point. Outside of that though, there are a few other portions of this episode that are worth bringing up. First of all, we need to talk about Dodie for a bit. She's just a bit much sometimes. She tends to really push the envelope a ton and read too far into things that aren't there. Dodie really was one of the driving forces behind Ginger feeling like Ian had reciprocated feelings for her. She was reading super far into him saying hi to her and walking by her locker and really everything else that he did. That right there, combined with him trying to be a charmer in order to get his passing grade, would ultimately be what really led to Ginger doing what she did in this episode. I do have to take a sec though to point out the part where Darren walks into the chemistry room and Dodie asks him for his guy opinion on how Ginger looks. Darren just kind of by default says that he isn't good at that kind of thing and refuses to give his input. I mean, sure, at face value, I accept that answer. Darren isn't exactly the best with his words sometimes, so I see why he wouldn't want to engage in that conversation. However, if we look a bit into that statement, it could be gathered that maybe he didn't want to give his input because he didn't want to give Ginger the wrong idea. It could be A, he knows that Ginger has been confused about feelings towards him in the past and he doesn't want to dig that back up, or B, he doesn't want to show his true feelings for her by expressing how he feels about her looks. Either way, circling back to the original point, this all ties into how annoying Dodie was being throughout this entire episode, considering that she's the one who was posing the question to Darren in the first place. Now, on another note, I really have to bring up Courtney and her role in this episode. It's interesting to me how Courtney is towards the prospect of Ginger and Ian being a couple. Like, her and Miranda are best friends. Surely, she knows that Miranda has a crush on Ian. I mean, Miranda kept talking about how much better that soccer jacket would look on her as she was jealous of Ginger. But like, regardless of Miranda's feelings, Courtney still pushes Ian and Ginger together very heavily. All of this just really makes me question Courtney's intentions, and it adds to my mixed feelings all in all. Courtney knows that Miranda hates Ginger's guts. So with that in mind, she has to know that by doing things like that, embracing Ginger at times, she's basically throwing gas on the flames of Miranda's hatred towards Ginger. Courtney knows that in the long run, she's making things worse for Ginger by pissing Miranda off even further. It's just a weird juxtaposition of messages being sent by Courtney through and through. Like, we know from the first episode that we covered that Courtney gets a lot of joy from manipulation and stirring the pot in the way of messing with other people's emotions. I can't help but wonder if she could be stirring the pot on purpose when she treats Ginger the way that she does. On that note though, the reason I bring up the juxtaposition of messages from Courtney is because at the same time that Courtney is potentially stirring the pot, she's also looking out for Ginger in a different sense. It's like she stirs the pot as far as Ginger and Miranda is concerned, however, she keeps a close eye on Ginger throughout the her and Ian situation during the chemistry exam. Ginger reaches a point where she nearly reveals to Ian her true feelings about him, but just then, Courtney walks up and stops her right in time. More or less, Courtney was trying to protect Ginger from embarrassing herself by showing her true feelings for Ian in front of everyone. The thing is though, right after she saves Ginger from doing that, she immediately phones Miranda and is dumbfounded about the fact that Ian let her keep the jacket. It's really hard to read whether Courtney actually cares about Ginger, and it's just kind of strange. It's like Courtney does this odd dance between destruction and damage control, and it can be really confusing to try to keep up with. Courtney is a character who I feel has many interesting layers, and throughout the run of this series, we see a lot of different sides of her as her true colors continue to show more and more. Now, moving on, we're going to check out an episode that shines an interesting light on our perceptions of Darren, and it serves as almost a counter to the last episode. We're talking about the episode called Piece of My Heart. As this episode starts out, we see Hoodsy through the vent holes in a locker at school. He drops a letter for Macy into the locker, and next thing you know, we see her walk up and open it, surprised to find the letter inside. Meanwhile, over in Carl's class, Hoodsy shows up late, which gets him scolded by the teacher.
You make the drop.
She's got these cute frog stickers all over her locker.
Never mind the frogs. Pinky's on her last legs. What ho, gents? Go bore someone else, Grippling.
You can't fool me, Fautley. You're up to something.
Carl brushes Blake off, saying that they're just having another boring week, and then we cut over to the junior high, where Macy is telling Ginger and Dodie about the letter that she got.
Roses smell good. Picnics have ants. Please ask me to the Sadie Hawkins dance. Signed, your mystery man.
His handwriting's so deep.
Ginger asks if Macy is going to ask the mystery man to the dance, but she says she can't because she doesn't even know who he is. Dodie assures Macy that he's probably going to be in contact again soon, considering that he wants to be asked. With Macy going with her secret admirer, and Dodie going with Chet Zipper, all that's left is Ginger, who has plans to ask Ian Richton to the dance.
I'm worried he's already been asked.
Hello? That's why you have to hurry up.
I know, but Darren and I have a pact. If Ian's already taken, he and I are going together.
Just then, Mr. Celia comes in, saying that they're going to be dissecting pig hearts this week, which leads to us cutting right on over to Carl and Hoodsy, who talk about how they have plans to steal Mr. Celia's pig heart to donate it to Pinky, this sick cow that Carl saw an article about in the local newspaper. After that, we cut on over to Dodie, who tells Ginger that it's time for her to ask Ian to the dance. As Ginger finally works up the courage to approach Ian, this happens.
So, Ian, anyone ask you to the Sadie Hawkins dance yet?
No, but my dad says it's probably because I'm really good looking. See, when you're really good looking, people are kind of intimidated by you.
Right. So, do you want to go with me?
Okay.
After asking Ian to the dance, Miranda walks right back over to Courtney, saying that it's her turn for her to ask her date to the dance. However, Courtney says that the invitation has already been sent. And just like that, we're right back to Ginger's house, where she's laying on the floor, talking to Dodie and Macy, feeling really bummed about not getting to go to the dance with Ian.
Looks like it'll be me and Darren.
Oh, sorry, miss. I was thinking this was the Patterson residence.
Hey, Winston. Next house over. You making a delivery?
Miss Grippling's invitation to Master Patterson for the Sadie Hawkins dance.
What? Am I hearing correctly?
Winston heads over to Darren's house to deliver the invitation, and Ginger, along with her friends, are completely floored seeing what's going on.
Would you be Master Patterson?
Guess so.
Miss Courtney has sent me with this, sir.
You serious?
As serious as the Queen.
Darren and Courtney?
We see Darren opening up the letter to find an invitation inside that says Courtney expects his accompaniment to the Sadie Hawkins dance and that he's kindly to keep it secret so that they surprise everyone. Darren is just hyped to get the invitation, and we cut right on over to Carl and Hoodsy, who are working on a pen with a built-in microphone that they plan to give to Mr. Celia to figure out where he's going to keep the pig heart. All of a sudden, there's a knock at the doghouse, and they're surprised to see none other than Blake Grippling at the door, saying that he wants in on Operation Pinky. Blake says that he has a soft spot for the cow as well, and that if they're willing to call a temporary truce, he can offer the services of Winston and their car so that they can work together to save Pinky. We fast forward to the next day at breakfast.
Would you mind giving this to Mr. Celia for me?
Not another present. It won't help you get a good grade in his class when you get to junior high. He doesn't work that way.
Oh, this is a strictly professional gesture from one scientist to another.
All right.
You're the best, sis. I'll try to remember to thank you in a speech someday.
Over at Darren's house, we see him talking to his older brother Will. He asks for some advice, saying that the most popular girl in school asked him to the dance, and that it's kind of a huge deal.
Why are you tripping? Now you know you got the Patterson blood flowing all through those veins. Who's following in my footsteps now? Who?
Ow! I am!
I can't hear you.
I am! Please release.
You been wearing Dad's new Ride-On deodorant?
Yeah.
Now I bet that had something to do with it.
Over in Mr. Celia's class, we see everyone leave as Ginger stops to give him the pen from Carl. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Carl, Hoodsy, and Blake are listening, waiting for any information that they can get. Back in the halls, Macy is telling Ginger and Dodie about how she got another letter from her mystery man, saying that if she leaves a ticket for him at the front door, then he's gonna pay her back.
You don't think this is someone's idea of a practical joke, do you?
No way. Who'd be mean enough to do that?
Be right back.
Ginger goes into the girls' bathroom where she finds Courtney, who's in the middle of brushing her hair. Ginger walks up and asks her if she's going to the dance, and Courtney happily says yeah. It's not long after that Ginger cuts straight to the point, asking Courtney if she's playing a practical joke on Darren.
Am I missing something here?
You didn't ask Darren Patterson to the dance just to play a trick on him, did you?
Who? You mean Will?
What?
I asked Will Patterson to the dance.
Right, Will. That's who I meant.
Oh, why would I want to play a practical joke on Will? You forget, I take high school French with him. He is my dream man. Promise not to tell anyone. I want to make a big entrance.
Courtney asks Ginger who she's taking to the dance, but Ginger says that she's probably just going by herself. Courtney says that's so charmingly 21st century of Ginger and that she herself could never go alone. A couple hours later, we cut over to Carl, Hoodsy, and Blake, who are still listening for any activity with the microphone pen. Just when they're starting to get fed up and bored, they get some useful information.
You Celia?
Is that the pig's heart?
Yep. Where do you want it?
Store it in the cafeteria freezer. Oh, but make sure you mark it Mr. Celia. Chef Bob's known for his broad definition of luncheon meats.
Gotcha.
Having freshly gained the info they need, Carl and his friends decide to get right to step 2 of their plan. Meanwhile, upstairs, in Ginger's room, she's preparing to have a serious talk with Darren. He shows up out of nowhere, saying that he has something really important to tell her. He explains that he isn't going to be able to go to the dance with her because he got invited by Courtney, and since he knew that she was going to ask Ian, he accepted the invite.
Darren, stop. There's been a huge mix-up. Courtney didn't mean to ask you to the dance.
Wow. I've heard of being jealous, but man...
What do you mean?
It's not like we had this set plan to go to the dance together.
That's not it. It's just that...
Oh, I got it. You just didn't think that anyone would ask me. Good old Darren. Always the friend, never the date.
No, you're not letting me finish.
I'm sorry you can't be happy for me.
Darren, but Darren...
We then cut over to Courtney, who's finishing getting ready while on the phone with Miranda. She makes Miranda promise to act surprised when she walks in with Will, and after they're done talking, Courtney buzzes Winston to take her to the dance. However, Winston doesn't appear to be there to answer her call. While that's happening, we see Ginger getting ready for the dance with her mom's help. Her mom asks her why she doesn't seem all too excited to be going to a dance tonight.
Darren's going to get humiliated and maybe have his heart broken all at the same time, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Why not? You two are thick as thieves.
Lately, he seems more interested in what his brother has to say.
And the reason you didn't ask Will to talk to him is because...
I didn't even think of it. Thanks, Mom.
Ginger runs right over to Darren's house to talk to Will. She explains to him that the invitation for Darren was actually meant for him, and that when she tried to explain that to Darren, he didn't believe her. Now Darren is out there standing alone, waiting for a shallow girl who doesn't even know that he exists. She begs Will to come talk to him.
His head may be metal, but his heart isn't.
That was beautiful, Will.
Nobody crushes my little brother, except me. Let's roll.
Over at the dance, we see Darren standing outside, waiting for Courtney. As he waits, Dodie walks up with her date, and not too long after, Macy approaches as well.
What do you think?
Gorgeous. Oh, except There, now you look perfect.
Thank you. Hello, Chet. Hello, Darren.
Darren walks away, and Dodie goes inside with her date, while Macy waits outside just a little bit longer for her mystery man. Nearby, Carl, Hoodsy, and Blake watch from afar as they plot to send Hoodsy inside to break them in to get the pig's heart. Meanwhile, unbeknown to them, Hoodsy has an ulterior motive of getting closer to Macy, who he actually has a huge crush on. The boys prepare to go in, and Winston says that he's going to pick up Courtney. However, Blake tells him that he needs to stay because he's needed for a far more important mission. We cut over to the dance where Macy is still waiting around for her mystery man to show up, and Dodie is struggling to dance with Chet because the two of them seem to be all left feet. Meanwhile, Miranda and Ian are sitting on the bleachers nearby.
So, Miranda, wanna dance?
Who comes to a dance to dance? I paid big bucks for this dress, and I don't want to ruin it by having fun.
Okie dokie.
Hoodsy ends up making his way in, picking up his ticket under the alias Mystery Man, and he's floored when he sees how dressed up Macy is. Before he makes contact with her though, he goes to fulfill his obligation to Carl, Blake, and Pinky. He sneaks to the back door and opens it up for them. They thank him and tell him to follow, but he says that he'll catch up later because he has something really important to do. Meanwhile...
Courtney! Hey, you look great! Of course, you always look great, so, no big surprise there.
I don't know what happened to Winston. He was on call. I had to walk the whole way. Oh, there's Will! I can't let him see me like this.
Huh?
Will pulls up in the car, leaving Darren feeling confused, wondering what he's doing there.
You know how we thought Dad's deodorant was working for you? Well, it isn't. Courtney's invite was meant for me, not you. Pretty funny, huh? But not in a ha-ha type of way. Like I'd ever go to some preteen dance anyway. Sorry, bro. Maybe someday when I'm away at college, the invite'll be for you.
Will drives off and Ginger says that she's sorry, explaining that she tried to tell him, but he stops her, saying that he owes her the biggest apology of his life. She tells him to save it because she'd rather just dance with him instead. As the two of them walk in, they pass a rather upset Courtney, who asks them if she looks preteen to them.
Take it from an expert. Don't ever listen to Will. I'm Darren, Will's brother. Look, you want to come along to the dance with me and Ginger?
No, you two go ahead. I need to freshen up a bit.
Inside the dance, we see Hoodsy finally approach Macy, who can't really tell who he is without her glasses on. Hoodsy gives her a fake name and passes her a droopy flower as he approaches her to dance with her.
I like your socks.
Thank you, Burl. Your voice sounds familiar. Do you go to Lucky Junior High?
I will someday.
A transfer. Can't wait.
Over in the cafeteria kitchen, we see Carl and Blake secure the pig heart, and Blake signals Winston to pull the car around so that they can deliver the heart to the farmer. Back at the dance, we see Hoodsy and Macy share a touching moment as they continue slow dancing, but when Dodie approaches, Hoodsy runs away, saying that he has to go now.
Oh, I'm too late! Who was he?
As that's happening, we see Blake and Carl finish their delivery, ding-dong ditching the house and leaving the heart behind on the doorstep. The two of them celebrate with ginger ale and agree that after this, they are back at each other's throats.
You really lucked out, Patterson. My date was a total dud. Come on, Miranda. It's a dance. As in, aren't we ever gonna?
Oh, all right. Just don't step on my shoes. They're new. And I want to be able to see the door so that when...
Oh, well, thank you.
Everyone is shocked to see Courtney arrive barefoot and donning a tiara made of flowers. Miranda asks her where her date is, and she says that she decided to come alone, and just like that, the episode comes to an end with Courtney and the rest of the kids dancing the night away. This episode was also dedicated in memory of Louis Arquette, who provided the voice of Mr. Celia. He unfortunately passed away from congestive heart failure after this episode was recorded. Now, this episode did a really interesting thing to our perceptions of Ginger and Darren as friends and a potential couple. What's interesting about this one is the entire fact that Ginger and Darren made a pact that they're gonna go together if she can't get Ian Richton to go with her. This right here just really reaffirmed my suspicions about Darren having feelings for Ginger, but trying to suppress them because he wants Ginger to explore her feelings with Ian first. In a way, he's making himself be her second choice, more or less, which kind of puts him in a sad position. However, with that being said, he put himself in that position. He's the one who essentially doesn't tell Ginger how he really feels when he has the chance to do it. With this one, it's interesting because we see Darren get really excited about getting the invitation from Courtney Grippling, which, might I add, wasn't properly addressed to Will, apparently. Darren has never really expressed any interest in Courtney at all. We've never seen Darren as one to show any romantic interest in anyone up to this point, but he certainly hasn't towards Courtney. You can tell that Darren, more than anything, is excited to be getting some attention. The fact that he thought the most popular girl in school was asking him out was a big deal to him. However, much like the situation between Ian Richton and Ginger in the last episode where Darren looked out for her, we would see Ginger looking out for Darren in the potential of there being something between him and Courtney. She even approaches Courtney directly, looking for clarity and reassurance to the worry that she could be planning a practical joke on Darren or something along those lines. However, when she reaches out to Courtney, that's when she gets the shocking news that the invite was never meant for Darren to begin with. This is just like in the last one where Darren overheard Ian talking to one of his friends about how Ginger is his A ticket. This happening armed Ginger with some unfortunate information that she had the responsibility to deliver. What's interesting about it though, and what really sets this one apart from the last episode, is the fact that Ginger was able to actually talk to Darren about it directly in a one-on-one setting. Now, with that being said, in the last episode, if Darren had gotten to talk about Ian's behavior one-on-one without her friends interrupting, I'm a solid 99% sure that Ginger would have believed him. Ginger knows that Darren is one of her best friends on this planet and that she can trust him. He always has her best interest and her happiness at heart, so with that being said, she knows that he wouldn't lie to her. However, the same can't really be said for Darren. What really gets me is the fact that in this episode, when the roles are reversed and Ginger ends up coming to him with some unfortunate news, he literally accuses her of being jealous. More or less insinuating that she's making it up because she wants Darren now that she can't have Ian. It's really frustrating to see Darren act this way towards her. She was just trying to be honest with him about how it was a mistake, but he really took the time to show his true colors and lash out at her. He makes a comment about how he's tired of always being Darren the friend and never the date, and basically says that Ginger can never be happy for him, saying that she thought that no one would ask him. This really, more than anything, showed how Darren really feels. Deep down inside, he's frustrated that Ginger never really chose him over Ian. Which is just ultimately annoying because she straight up came to him a few episodes ago saying that she thinks she has feelings for him, but he's the one who turned her down. More than anything, I have to give him another -1 respect point for jumping to such negative conclusions about her so quickly. He just assumes the worst of Ginger, and those feelings come from a place of frustration because in his mind, he's basically always going to be Darren the friend and never Darren the date. On top of Darren being clearly bothered by this, though, it's clear as day that Ginger still does have feelings for him as well. Sure, at this point she's still wrapped up in her wavering interest in Ian, but there's a reason why Darren was going to be her alternate date to the dance. On top of that, there's a reason that Darren agreed to be the alternate date to the dance to begin with. When Ginger was under the impression that Courtney was asking Darren to the dance, you can definitely tell that she felt some type of way about it. She had very mixed feelings about Darren getting that invitation. The big reason behind that, of course, and a lot of the situations between her and Darren, is the fact that she still has unsorted feelings as it pertains to him. The thing about it, though, is that Ginger knows this. She already realized that she had those feelings and even made an attempt to communicate about those feelings like a mature person does. However, Darren was the one who was completely unreceptive, despite him clearly having some feelings for her deep down inside. All things considered, this episode really didn't give me too much hope for the situation between Ginger and Darren, if I'm being honest. I would have enjoyed maybe a sweet moment between them at the dance, but the thing is, the show wasn't ready for that yet. Like I said earlier in the video, the relationship that would occur between Ginger and Darren is one that had a slow burn kind of build up without a doubt. Within this episode though, it did give me some hope for Macy and Hoodsie. The feelings that he has for her are really sweet, and it always makes me happy that Hoodsie is a kid who isn't afraid to show some feelings. On top of that, Macy was always painted in kind of a not so positive light in my opinion, so for them to have her finally get some attention from a boy was something that made me happy to see. I think the potential of a relationship between them at this point is portrayed incredibly sweetly, and knowing what it ends up progressing to in the future really makes this episode land well in that department. The pairing of Hoodsie and Macy is a very interesting one, and it's really adorable and sweet, all things considered. Now, as we wind down towards the ending of this video, we're about to dive into something huge. The episode we just discussed was technically the second to last episode in Season 1. This season, through and through, did a fantastic job of laying a lot of groundwork for our understanding of these characters. However, the final episode of this season is one that, without a doubt, had a huge impact on the future of the series. It's an episode that, to a degree, answered a good amount of questions, and it did a really good job of foreshadowing some future events and leaving us some unresolved situationships that we will definitely be circling back to. Next up, we're looking at the Season 1 finale, Season of Caprice.
At some moments, it seems like time actually stands still. I mean, when you're waiting for something really cool to happen, one lousy minute can last an eternity. And then there's summer vacation, the long-awaited freedom from routine. It kind of does strange things to people. At Camp Caprice, praise, we don't say mooses, we say meat.
As the girls celebrate the start of summer vacation, Principal Milty rushes by them, excited to spend his summer away from the kids. The girls discuss how much they'd still have to do before the bus for Camp Caprice shows up in a few days, but just then Courtney comes up, confused as to what they're talking about.
We're talking about Camp Caprice. You know, bonfires and ghost stories.
Canoe races and s'mores.
Mosquitoes are the threat of encephalitis.
Miranda completely scoffs at the idea of summer camp as she explains that her and Courtney are going to be cruising the Virgin Islands this summer. The two of them continue on their way.
Could they be more 12?
Miranda, about this summer camp thing, what's the skinny?
Don't even go there, Courtney. Some kids may consider it a rite of passage.
Really?
But I simply do not see it that way. Stupid songs, pointless hikes, and macrame friendship bracelets that clash with everything. Trust me, Courtney, it's not for a girl like you.
A girl like me? What's that supposed to mean?
It means you're a little high maintenance for summer camp.
Miranda tells Courtney that she wouldn't last 2 minutes in a place like Camp Caprice, and just at that comment alone, Courtney calls up her butler Winston and tells him to cancel her cruise and book her for a summer at Camp Caprice. Miranda immediately gets upset, saying that her dad's not going to let her go on this cruise by herself, but Courtney doesn't care as she's dead set on proving Miranda wrong and making it through this proverbial rite of passage.
You just totally ruined my whole summer! Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
Later that evening, we see Carl and Hoodsie walking home. Hoodsie is upset because his mom is forcing him to spend the summer on his aunt's pig farm again. As they continue, Carl comes across a stolen dog poster, which Hoodsie says is the third different stolen dog poster in the last 2 blocks.
What do you want to bet that it's the same Demento who was responsible for the disappearance of my dog Monster?
That was years ago, Carl. You've got to move past the sadness in your life.
Carl says that it may have been years ago now, but it happened near this same time of year. He feels like there's a crime to be solved here, and he tells Hoodsie that this is his chance to forget about the pig farm this summer, and instead they need to concoct a plan to catch the dog thief. Carl says that he's set on payback, so all they need to do is demand that their parents allow them to stay home this summer instead of going to the pig farm or summer camp.
Absolutely not. No, no, and double no.
But sending me to camp is like making Einstein play tennis.
What are you up to?
Aw, you disappoint me, Lola. Look, cut me a little slack here, and I promise to take care of you when you're really, really old. Deal?
That's a flattering offer, Cal.
His mom tells him that if he comes up with a good, productive reason for him to stay home, then she will contemplate considering it. With that, Carl somberly vows to Monster that he won't let her down.
Every so often you reach a point when your life is like a blank journal. Waiting to be filled.
Ginger sits atop her trunk, struggling to get it closed enough for her to latch it. Just then, Darren comes up to her window, asking if she wants a hand. He sits next to her on the trunk as he shares the unfortunate news with her that he's being sent to military camp for the summer at his dad's request.
He won't say why, but I think it's because I'm not like him and Will.
But that's a good thing, Darren.
Yeah, I always thought so. But now it's Spangler Military Academy for me. Same one the old man went to when he was a boy.
Spangler? Are you serious? Then you'll be right across the lake from me. We can practically wave to each other.
Yeah, you'll be waving. I'll be saluting.
Oh, miss you already, Darren.
After that, we get this disturbing look at someone trespassing into a yard in the middle of the night with dog treats. They coax a dog out of a dog door, and then they proceed to literally steal the dog. The next morning, we see Hoodsy and Carl come across a stolen dog sign for the same exact dog that we just witnessed being taken. Carl says that this officially marks 5 dogs taken in total, and that they're running out of time. Him and Hoodsy continue to brainstorm when they come across their friend Kit, who's just finishing up cleaning a home nearby. This gives the boys the idea to pitch to their parents that they're going to start their own cleaning business for the summer. To them, it's the perfect idea because now they have a legit reason to stay home for the summer, and on top of that, this gets them into people's houses so that they can do some investigating and try to track down the dog napper. Hoodsy doubts this plan a bit, saying that they don't really have anything on qualified cleaners. However, Carl has a gimmick in mind that he thinks is going to make them stand out from everyone else.
All vampire cleaning service.
We won't suck your blood, just your dust.
But we don't do windows or mirrors.
It freaks us out because we don't have reflections.
I don't get it. I get it. I just don't believe it.
Carl breaks down the numbers and explains how they plan to undercut the competition by only charging 50 cents per hour. To the tune of each of the boys throwing in a free shiatsu massage for their mothers, they agree to let them stay home and get a start to their business. Meanwhile, we see Courtney Grippling preparing to go away to Camp Caprice, which consists of having a whole team of seamstresses embroider her name on her clothes, and having people pack her bags for her. While that's happening, Winston chimes in with some concerns that he's had about the whole thing.
I've got a bad feeling about this, miss. Pardon my saying, but you're the type who needs tending to.
Winston, not you too. I am going to Camp Caprice, I am going to drink bug juice, and I am going to hear no more about it.
Understood, miss.
Now, I need you to keep a stiff upper lip. You know how the staff looks to you for strength.
Just then, out of nowhere, Courtney's mother bursts in, questioning Courtney's decision to go to summer camp instead of coming on their family cruise. Courtney reassures her mother that she's gonna be just fine, much to the joy of her brother Blake, who's really stoked to have his sister not be coming along.
Show some compassion. Your sister's spending her summer in little more than third world conditions.
There, fragile matriarch. I've done the research and found out it's practically a spa.
Should I line your sleeping bag with the same fabric I use for your eye shade, miss?
We cut on over to the bus for Camp Caprice, where Ginger is hugging her mom goodbye while her friends are waiting for her on the bus. As they all take their seats and the bus begins to roll, they're stopped abruptly by Courtney, who shows up at the last minute with Winston and her driver hauling her massive trunk. Ginger is completely shocked to find out that Courtney is coming, but nevertheless, Courtney reassures her that she was briefed on the ins and outs of camp, so she's sure that she'll fit right in.
So, there are 2 kinds of friends. Your home friends and your away from home friends. And when those 2 sets of friends collide, you kind of see them both in a whole new light.
The bus continues its drive through the beautiful summer woods as the girls sing in anticipation of the summer fun that awaits them. As the sun begins to set, they arrive at Camp Caprice.
And I'm thinking I see some new faces out there. Hi, new faces. Hi. And also some familiar ones. Hi.
We've been standing here for hours. I'm ready for my masseuse.
It's only been 5 minutes, and they don't have a masseuse.
And for last year's guppies, now entering the sunfish age group.
Oh, that's us!
This is the summer you'll get certified. Right after you make the island swim at Camp Caprice Lake.
The main counselor introduces Jed, the guy who's the head of the waterfront, and we learn that Macy has an ongoing crush on Jed and is very excited to see him again. As that's happening, a couple of Ginger's camp friends come up, excited to see how much she's changed since last year. While the folks at camp are all catching up, we cut back over to Carl and Hoodsy, who are on their way to their first cleaning gig for the only customer who's called so far, Principal Milty. Hoodsy seems nervous about this job and starts to bring up to Carl that they're vampires, so they shouldn't be out in the daylight. Carl argues, saying that doesn't matter because they still need to clean this house because they don't have any other customers calling. Carl tries to reassure Hoodsy that he doesn't have anything to be scared of because he isn't even their principal anymore, considering that he got promoted to the middle school.
When he was at Lucky Elementary, we were in his office every other day getting screamed at. I don't like getting screamed at, Carl.
Ancient history. He probably doesn't even remember us. We're here to clean your home.
Hello, Carl. Robert.
And Carl said, why did you pull the pin out on the fire extinguisher just to see? And so I did, and then
Hoods, snap out of it.
Principal Milty clarifies with the boys that they're on the same page and that he's paying them to clean the house and nothing more. They agree, and just like that, he's on his way to run some errands, telling them to leave the key under the mat when they're finished. As they head on into his house, we cut over to the military camp where Darren's dad seems to be having a bit of a tough time saying goodbye to him. Darren asks him one last time to take him home with him, but he just gives him a good solid punch to the arm and tells him that he's gonna thank him for this one day.
So long, son.
Assignment number 1, pitch the tent you will sleep in!
Hi, how are you? I'm Darren.
Move!
Over at Camp Caprice, we see Dodie, Macy, and Ginger setting up their cabin as Dodie takes charge, hanging up a chalkboard for each of them to write a summer goal on. Just then, Courtney comes in, asking when the servants are going to be there to carry her trunk the rest of the way to the hotel. Ginger and the girls break the news to her that there is no servants or hotels and that they're all staying in this cabin. They explain that they are staying in the Navajo cabin and that they are the Navajo girls.
Well, I'm all unpacked. I'm gonna go check out what's changed since last year.
I've got to hit the infirmary.
Already?
Just want to acquaint myself with the staff. It pays to grease the wheel.
I'll walk you over. I want to stock up on postcards at the canteen.
Brace ya!
As the girls run off excited, Courtney lingers behind, having tried to ask if she could tag along, but being overlooked in their excitement.
My favorite thing about being away from a place you really love is how, when you come back, it's almost like it's new again. There you are, Lady Guinevere. How have you been?
Ginger pulls an apple out of her bag that she packed especially for her favorite horse. As she feeds it to her, a boy walks up holding a saddle, saying that campers aren't supposed to feed the horses, citing that it's a camp rule. She explains that it's just a few apples and that she brought them for an old friend.
She remembers you.
Either that or she's using me for my produce. Can I?
Don't let Margie find out.
Ginger asks the boy if he's new here, saying that she's never seen him there before, as she goes in to introduce herself. However, just at the exact time that Ginger goes to shake his hand, they're interrupted by Courtney, who walks up and just kind of makes a jerk of herself.
Boy, you there. Can you run a quick errand? Bottled water.
I'm out of here.
That was rude. He didn't even introduce himself.
Maybe he's shy.
We cut on over to Carl and Hoodsy, who are cleaning Principal Milty's house, which consists of Hoodsy doing all the work while Carl kind of lays around and eats food that he found in the kitchen. When Carl goes digging in some cushions, he comes across a dog toy, which makes him think that he's stumbled upon a clue. He brings it right up to Hoodsy, who's completely destroying Principal Milty's bathtub, noting that neither of them have seen any signs of a dog anywhere in the house. After that, we get a glimpse of the military camp and what it's all about. We see the drill instructor telling the group of boys that when he gives the signal, they're going to hit the ground and crawl under the barbed wire, and at the halfway point, they're going to meet another recruit to pass the baton to them and crawl back.
Sir? Yeah, what skill is this supposed to teach us?
Teamwork, Patterson! Something your father and brother know all about.
Right. Just checking.
The instructor gives the signal, and we see the boys crawling through the rain as Darren just gets covered in mud while everyone passes him. He continues preparing to pass the baton, and he finds his partner to be the last person he ever would expect to see.
Ouch! Stupid barbed wire.
Miranda? You're here too?
I got drafted once Courtney backed out of our cruise. My dad's head sergeant here.
I thought I had it bad.
People, this is not a cakewalk. Do you copy? Now hand off that baton and move!
Thanks.
Save you a seat of mess hall?
Assuming you make it back alive, I guess.
Darren smiles ear to ear, seeming smitten with Miranda, and just like that, we cut over to Camp Caprice, where a counselor is telling a ghost story around the fire. He tells them the tale of a girl who got lost attempting to swim across the lake, and right at the scariest part of the story, Sasha shows up with graham crackers, scaring half of the campers to death. Macy ends up voicing her concerns with them getting certified this year, noting that they have to swim across the lake and that she isn't a very good swimmer, but Dodie embraces her, telling her that that would be a perfect goal for her to put on the chalkboard. After that, the camp counselor Margie ends up arriving with the rest of the fixins for some s'mores.
I'll help you, Margie. Dodie, I have to say, I'm really impressed with your camp spirit. How would you like to be a sort of counselor in training?
Oh, I would like that more than anything, Margie.
Margie gives Dodie her whistle, and she's just over the moon excited. They all prepare to make s'mores as Sasha continues passing out boxes of crackers.
Take the next one down.
Hey, no hogging the crackers, Ginger. You look funny. What's up?
Nothing. Just thinking about my summer goal.
The next morning at Camp Caprice, we see Ginger wake up before the rest of the Navajo girls as she walks out with her canteen. As the clock strikes 7:30, the horn goes off for all the girls to get up and at 'em, but Courtney is none too thrilled. She's covered in bug bites, deprived of her precious beauty sleep, and just nonstop complaining about being stuck there with Dodie and Macy in the middle of nowhere, as well as being forced to eat the food offerings at camp. While they continue to get ready, we cut over to Ginger, who's enjoying an early morning stroll.
You know how you can feel one way in your regular life back home, but then as soon as summer comes, it's almost like you're a totally different person. I never thought I would become infatuated with a boy I hardly even know.
Just like that, Sasha appears behind Ginger, carrying some archery supplies as the two of them bump into each other, almost like fate.
Cupid, I presume?
Not exactly. I just work for him.
Hi, Sasha! She's cute. I remember my first summer at Sleepaway.
As Sasha prepares to go set up the archery course, Ginger talks to him about how she's worried that he may have gotten the wrong impression about her. She says that she's not like Courtney, and how she really wasn't okay with the way that Courtney talked to him.
I'm not one of those kind of girls.
So what kind of girl are you?
Guess you're gonna have to find that one out for yourself.
After that, we cut right back over to Carl and Hoodsy, who are eating some ice cream. Carl has come to the conclusion that Principal Milty is definitely the dog napper, and that they're going to figure out why he would do such a thing. Carl begins to suspect that the whole operation could go even further than him, even as far up as the superintendent. Hoodsey suggests that they call the police, but Carl says that they need more concrete evidence first. Meanwhile, back at Camp Caprice, we see a couple of Ginger's camp friends approaching her cabin and calling her, inviting her to go on a nature hike.
I guess no one's there.
Hello, I'm Courtney. Gripling. Ginger's already gone.
Oh, let's go, Sarah.
Courtney walks up to them, telling them all about how Ginger and her are super tight friends. Courtney tells them that she's taken Ginger under her wing, inviting her to all of her parties and introducing her to all of the right people. The two of them seem none too interested in Courtney, but nevertheless, she insists that she join them on their hike. As that's going on, we cut over to the military camp where the recruits are being screamed at by Miranda's father about a 48-hour mission that they're being assigned to where they're going to be surviving with minimal supplies. He goes out of his way to belittle Chet Zipper specifically, saying that if the food supply runs out, they could all just eat him first.
Man, your dad is totally harsh, Miranda.
Beg pardon, Patterson. Did you have something to say?
I was just talking to Miranda.
I was talking to Miranda.
Looky here, son. When you address me, you will address me as sir. You understand?
Sir, yes, sir. I was just talking to Miranda, your daughter, sir. But please, carry on with intimidating and humiliating my peers, sir. I believe you were on Chet's zipper.
Miranda's father gets very heated at his daughter and Darren, and he punishes them with being forced to not go on the 48-hour mission and instead to stay behind and completely strip and refinish the barracks. As that's happening, we cut on over to Courtney on her hike with Ginger's camp friends, telling them all about how much she's done for Ginger.
It was me who set her up with her boyfriend back home, Ian Richton.
Ginger has a boyfriend? No way.
Oh, believe me, Ginger's boyfriend is a total catch. He's cute and rich and popular. And did I mention rich?
Wow, sounds like Ginger sure has changed.
I'll say.
Later that day, we see people making their attempts at swimming across the lake. The Cherokee girls make a new record, being the first cabin of girls to all make the swim successfully on the same morning. Meanwhile, the Navajo girls nearly set a record for the first cabin of girls to completely refuse to even try. That is, until Ginger finally steps up to the plate and decides to make the trek while the rest of her cabin follows behind in a canoe.
And another thing, it helps to picture something you really like waiting for you at the other end. Like a foot-long hoagie with melted Swiss. Or a universal remote control with illuminated night vision keypad. Or she's off.
Ginger swims across the lake, making a very good time in comparison to her friends who are lagging behind in the canoe. She swims as rapidly as she can, picturing Sasha waiting for her on the other side. We then cut to later on that day, where the Navajo girls are all making friendship bracelets. Ginger sees the girl from earlier who said hi to Sasha sitting alone while she practices the guitar. She decides to approach her and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Ginger.
I'm Melanie.
Wow, thanks.
Ginger explains that she's learning to play the guitar too, as she asks how old Melanie is. Melanie says that she's almost 9, and Ginger is really impressed to hear how good she is for her age. She then asks if she can play Melanie a song that she's been working on.
Promise not to laugh, okay?
Okay.
There were copper-colored ponies. There was air that smelled like rain. And the moon was out in daytime when I first learned your name.
As the two of them start to share a laugh, Courtney comes up and, like she has a habit of doing, ruins the moment by completely being rude to Melanie, calling her by the wrong name and treating her like a baby. Courtney tells Ginger that she's noticed she's been giving her the cold shoulder. Courtney says that she feels like Ginger might be a bit lovesick.
How'd you know?
Ginger, when it comes to affairs of the heart, I know. And it's understandable that you'd be a little cranky, what with your boyfriend Ian so far away.
Courtney,
Courtney just kind of goes off on Ginger, saying that this camp she's raved about has been a total bore and that she's being treated like she's just like everyone else. Ginger reminds her that she is just like everyone else and that she's just being really high maintenance.
You've changed, Ginger, and I'm not the only one to notice it. Cinnamon Ann and Sarah said so too.
Maybe they're right.
After that, we cut over to Carl and Hoodsy, who are doing their normal cleaning routine and watching the news. They see a report saying that local police have noticed that a very specific brand of dog treats are being used by the dog napper, as they urge people to keep an eye on their dogs, especially if they have a weak spot for those specific treats. After that, we see Hoodsy start to go off on Carl, saying that he's the one doing all the work, and more often than not, he's cleaning up after Carl again and again.
But why?
Because you're a walking pigsty, Carl.
No, Hoodsy. Why does Milty continue to hire us to clean and re-clean his already clean home? Because he's got something to hide, Hoods. Incriminating dog hair, perhaps? Fur balls? Slobber?
Come on, Carl. I think I would notice if I found something like an entire cabinet stocked with sausage snap dog treats.
After finding what Carl deems to be their definitive proof, we cut right back to the barracks at the military camp, where we see Darren and Miranda in the beginning of scraping the siding away. Miranda continues to be frustrated with her dad being a jerk and making her call him sir, to which Darren says that he can relate to, noting that it's kind of funny that they've never hung out before, considering that they have so much in common.
We are not hanging out, Patterson. We simply happen to be sharing the most miserable summer of my entire life. I just hope Courtney is half as miserable as we are.
Don't worry, she is.
What have you got?
Letter from Ginger. I can't let you read the first 3 pages, but here.
Courtney, however, is having a terrible time.
Miranda gets sad at the thought of Courtney not making a single friend, and we cut over to Courtney, who's alone in the cabin crying her eyes out. She gets up and writes "survive the rest of Camp Caprice" on the chalkboard as her goal, and we cut right back over to Miranda, who's just completely in tears.
Miranda, what's wrong?
This is all my fault. The only reason Courtney is toughing it out over there is to prove to me that she can do it. All because of the stupid fight we had. Now we're both having miserable summers.
Well, Miranda, the summer's not over yet.
Over at Camp Caprice, we see the girls all gathering at the barn for Matilda the cow giving birth to a baby calf. Sasha and the farmer help her through the birth, as Ginger gives a hand by bringing them a towel and a bucket of warm water. Sasha is happy to announce that the cow birthed a happy baby bull.
Hey, Sasha! What's his name?
Ian.
Oh, what a coincidence! Just like Ginger's boyfriend.
While that's going down, we cut on over to Carl and Hoodsy walking down the street while Hoodsy is downing handfuls of the dog treats. As they walk, Carl theorizes that Principal Milty is hiding all the kidnapped dogs down in his basement, claiming the basis to be the fact that the basement is the one and only area of the house that he has dubbed completely off limits to them. Carl claims that they have to get Milty once and for all, and the two decide to set their plan in motion. We then cut to later that day at Camp Caprice, where everyone is gathered around the fire and singing. Ginger approaches and says hi to Melanie, who's sitting fireside. Ginger seems a bit down, which leads to Melanie asking her what's wrong.
Nothing.
You miss your boyfriend, Ian?
Ian's not my boyfriend, Melanie. He's just a guy I go to school with.
That's not what my brother said.
Your brother?
Yeah, Sasha said you can't be his girlfriend because you're already somebody's girlfriend.
Oh, so that's why he's been acting so strange.
Ginger tells Melanie that she forgot her guitar at their cabin the other day, and she tells her to stop by and pick it up a little later. Just then, Sasha shows up, being hailed as the man of the hour for helping birth Ian Richton the calf earlier in the day. Ginger approaches him calmly, asking him if they can talk for a bit. The two of them walk away from the group, going to chat on their own.
I think I know why you're mad at me. This is about Ian, right?
Hey, you don't have to explain anything to me, Ginger. Besides, I've got it all figured out.
What's that supposed to mean?
Nothing. I just finally realized what kind of girl you are.
Oh, really? And what kind of girl is that?
A wannabe.
What?
A former nobody who just wanted to be cool. So you cozied up to girls like Courtney and guys like Ian. Mr. Rich and Popular, right?
Ginger rightfully claps back at Sasha, telling him that he doesn't know Courtney, Ian, or even Ginger herself, so he has no right to throw around accusations and assume things about any of them. Just like that, she storms off while he clearly feels like a fool. Meanwhile, back at the military camp, we see Darren and Miranda sneaking out in the middle of the night. They sneak past the patrol light and down to the dock, where they leave behind their uniforms and swim off towards the island in the middle of the lake. While they're doing that, the girls over at Camp Caprice are finishing up their movie night. Dodie tells everyone that lights out is in 25 minutes, so they all need to go get ready for bed.
Way to go, Dodie! You have a real knack for breaking up the fun.
Thank you, Margie.
I want you to have this.
Is this what I think it is?
Yeah-huh. The Camp Caprice Master Key. Good for anything and everything that requires a key. Keep it somewhere safe.
Oh, I will, Margie! Right next to my whistle, which is right next to my heart.
While that's going on, we see Carl and Hoodsy, who are straight up spying on Principal Milty from outside of his house. They see him come up from the basement and hide a key under a jar of change. After a while, he leaves and the two of them break into his house and Carl claims the key. Hoodsy has the foresight to mention calling the police, but Carl stops him, saying that they need to secure the dogs and trap Principal Milty before calling for backup.
Oh my gosh!
What'd I tell you?
We immediately jump right back to Darren and Miranda, who are struggling to swim across the lake. Meanwhile, it's time for lights out at Camp Caprice. Dodie is such a stickler about it that the girls end up stumbling around in the dark with flashlights. As soon as she falls asleep, though, Ginger just turns the lights back on. Not too long after that, though, there's a knock at the door, and Ginger is surprised to find Melanie, who came to get her guitar. She tells Ginger that she was having some trouble sleeping, so Ginger offers to walk her back to her cabin. After that, we cut right back over to Carl and Hoodsy, who surprisingly found a dog tied up with a muzzle next to a wood-burning stove in the basement.
Who is she? Scoodles? Lulabelle?
Nope. This is the Duchess.
Oh, this dog's royalty. Will he stop at nothing?
Carl, where do you suppose all the other dogs are?
Carl and Hoodsy panic at the thought of what he could have possibly done to all of these dogs, and the two of them begin to set up their trap to catch him. While that's going on, we catch up on Darren and Miranda, who have finally made it to the halfway point of the lake. They decide to stop on the island for a while to catch their breath and rest up.
Hey, how about some dinner? I have 3 breath mints and a nickel.
I'll take care of dinner. Why don't you start a fire?
I don't have a lighter.
You know, Patterson, you actually could have used a full summer at military camp. For real.
Over at Camp Caprice, we see Melanie and Ginger walking together, while Melanie talks about how they would be sisters if she got married to Sasha. Ginger is quick to shoot that idea down, saying that she's mad at Sasha, and he's mad at her too.
But you wrote that song for him.
I never said it was.
I just know it was for him. My mom says you're supposed to say how you feel or else nobody knows how you feel. That's what she says.
Okay, Jed, I'll patrol this area and you take the south side.
Ginger quickly passes the guitar to Melanie, and the two of them make a run for it. Ginger makes it back to her cabin safely, and as she falls asleep, we cut on over to Carl's house, where Hoodsy's mom is calling to remind him to take his nose drops. At this point, Carl's mom puts the pieces together that Carl lied to her about staying the night at Hoodsy's house. However, instead of telling Hoodsy's mom about the lie this time, she ends up covering for him.
Sorry, Jojo, I'm a little spaced out. I'll go tell Hoodsy to treat his schnoz, okay? This better be worth it, Carl.
Not too long after that, we see the Navajo girls all sleeping sound as Macy gets up in the middle of the night, feeling motivated to finally conquer her fear of the lake. She sneaks out, waking up Dodie by accidentally slamming the door on her way out of the cabin. After that, we cut over to Milty's house, where Carl and Hoodsy have a trap rigged up. As soon as he walks through the door, Carl triggers the net, trapping Principal Milty and surprising him and the woman that he's on a date with.
Duchess? Well, how did you get loose?
It's the Duchess, Milty.
Let me down from here this instant, Foutley.
The police!
That's right, pretty miss. You landed yourself right smack dab in the middle of a crime scene.
They're onto me. They're onto me.
The woman runs away from Milty's house, as surprisingly enough, Carl's mom shows up saying that she followed the sirens there. She asks what they're doing here, and Carl reveals that Principal Milty is a wanted man.
According to these boys, sir, you are responsible for the recent string of pet nappings in the area.
I'm what?
He's the one who stole Monster 2, Mom. We've got proof.
Well, you better.
After that, we see Macy as she prepares to take the swim across the lake. However, she gets scared when she hears the sound of someone screaming. We learn that someone is none other than Darren, who managed to hurt his leg somehow, possibly spraining it or worse. Miranda says that she's gonna swim over to Camp Caprice to get some help. She takes off, and across the lake, we see Macy listening closely for more screams.
Hold it right there! Dodie, it's in the water! The lost swimmer of Camp Caprice!
Don't be ridiculous, Macy. That's just a ghost story.
Ow! Hurt her? Did you?
Yeah, probably just a wolf or something. Now, back to the cabin. You are in violation of Caprice curfew.
Macy tells Dodie to go back to the cabin as she has peace to make. She boldly jumps right into the lake, dead set on not letting the lost swimmer girl drown for a second time. Dodie goes to blow her whistle to alarm for help, however she's shocked to learn that her whistle is gone. She runs off to find it, meanwhile Macy continues to swim towards the middle of the lake. Dodie makes it all the way back to the Navajo cabin where she wakes up the other girls in her scramble to find her key and whistle. She tells them that Macy is in the middle of the lake and they all jump into action. Meanwhile,
Miranda? You're the lost swimmer of Camp Caprice Lake?
What are you talking about? I just escaped from military camp, but I got a cramp.
Oh, dear.
So give me one of your water wings, okay? I'm really tired.
Ginger, Dodie, and Courtney pull Macy and Miranda into the boat, and Dodie is full-blown freaking out, saying that her counselor and training status is at jeopardy just by her being out here with them. She ends up letting Miranda take the wheel, considering that her uncle owns a speedboat, and Miranda takes off to rescue Darren before they all retreat back to Camp Caprice. Back in the cabin, Miranda tells them all the story about what happened, including how Macy rescued her.
Yeah, I'm just glad to be away from Spangler. I mean, if I had to do another push-up or eat another helping of mystery stew, I'd just lose it.
You're so funny, Sasha.
Sasha? Who's Sasha?
I said squash. That's what's in the mystery stew, huh? Squasha.
After that, we cut back over to Principal Milty's house where Carl is explaining exactly where his theory came from. However, at the revelation that the Duchess is actually Principal Milty's dog, that theory is proven incorrect.
I chained her up in the basement because my new lady friend, Georgia, hates dogs. And she's desperately allergic. But I don't know how anyone could hate you, baby girl. Ooh. That's the same reason I hired you two numbskulls to clean my house every day.
So how do you explain all those sausage snaps?
The Duchess's favorite.
At the revelation that he was wrong, Carl feels heartbroken, having to come to terms with the fact that he might not ever know who stole his dog Monster when he was little.
I told you 1,000,000 times, Carl. Monster wasn't stolen. She just saw her window of opportunity and ran far, far away.
The police leave, considering that Carl's claims were completely baseless. Of course, as you'd expect, Principal Milty fires Carl and Hoodsy for accusing him of such a heinous crime, and he asks them to leave so him and the Duchess can call it a night. However, they're all surprised to find the Duchess is missing.
I'm just gonna do with you like I done did with the rest of them dang doggies. Drive you out of town, set you free, and hope to high heavens y'all don't find your way back. Oh, Pete, you! think I almost fell for a man with a mutt.
Back over at Camp Caprice, we hear Courtney and Miranda talking super early in the morning while everyone is still asleep. Courtney wakes everyone up as she begins to celebrate, realizing that today is their final day at Camp Caprice. However, her celebration is cut short as Courtney realizes that it's past 7:30 and the horns haven't begun to play the camp anthem yet.
The only time the morning anthem doesn't play is when something really serious has happened.
You two have to get out of here before Margie finds out you guys—
Good morning, morning, campers. Today is a solemn day indeed. Last night, for the first time in Camp Caprice history, 14 camp rules were broken in less than 24 hours. We also have reason to believe that there are 2 fugitives from Spangler Military Academy hiding out in the Navajo girls' bunk.
Dodie laments the fact that after all of her hard work, this is the end of her being a camp counselor. We cut to the camp all gathered together in a huge assembly, waiting for the Navajo girls to arrive. As they approach, they basically get a stone-cold public shaming, complete with a reading of the 14 rules that they all broke. As Ginger listens to them getting dragged through the dirt and being told that they're basically being suspended from Camp Caprice forever, Sasha sits nearby, giving Ginger a really nasty look, just thinking the worst of her. As Dodie cries her eyes out, being forced to give up her key and whistle, she asks Margie if she can say a few words. She declares that if Margie suspends them, then she's going against everything that their camp stands for.
Across the lake at Spangler Military Camp, 2 of our friends were having the worst summer of their lives.
Can we help it if we have camp spirit? Are we not supposed to spread it far so we can feel it?
Yes, but the rules clearly say...
And look at Macy. She conquered her fear of swimming to help someone who was in trouble. Can you penalize her for that?
As the Navajo girls continue to tell their story, everyone in the audience begins to advocate and cheer for them, starting to believe that they did the right thing for helping their friends when they were in their time of need, all realizing that leaving Miranda and Darren in danger certainly was not the right thing to do. As all of the ruffled feathers begin to finally calm down, Courtney shares a moment with the rest of the Navajo girls, saying that she's sorry for being a wet blanket. They all apologize back to her, saying that they could have been more welcoming to her, but Courtney fully admits, in a really out-of-character moment, that they were just treating her the same way that she treats them throughout the whole school year, so there's no hard feelings. She reminds them that come September, things aren't going to be any different, and just like that, her and Miranda decide to take off. After that, Ginger decides to take to the microphone. She talks about how, since everyone is speaking their minds, she wants to follow the advice of a really smart girl who told her that when you feel something in your heart, you're supposed to let it out. She then asks Melanie if she can borrow her guitar one more time.
I wrote this song for you, Sasha. There were copper-colored ponies. There was air that smelled like rain. And the moon was out in daytime when I first learned your name. And though the clouds, they quickly moved in, though the path looked overgrown, the time that I spent talking to you made me feel like I was home.
As the episode comes to an end, we see Ginger sitting on her bed, reflecting on the pictures in her scrapbook that she made, telling the tale of the special times that she had this year at Camp Caprice. She thinks about how thankful she is that Margie didn't decide to completely suspend them from camp.
But I still don't know if I'll be going back next summer. Kinda depends.
Now, with that episode having come to an end, there's just so much to say here. This episode has a lot of parts to it, and I really have a lot to dig into. First of all, I really want to tackle Carl's side of things super quick. His didn't have literally anything to do with Ginger or Darren or the relationship between them, but I definitely want to bring him up because in the future of this video series, once I'm done talking about Ginger and Darren's relationship, I want to cover a lot of other topics, and Carl is definitely on that list. I've talked about him before, specifically in an episode that covered the start of his relationship with Noelle Sussman, but this one was the first time that we really got a look at his emotional side a bit. You can tell that he has a lot of unresolved feelings about his dog Monster going missing. All these years later, he still uses Monster's doghouse as his base of operations. Deep down inside, Carl is hurting and missing his dog, feeling like there's more to the story as to what happened to Monster. The thing about this episode, though, is that it left that stone completely unturned in the end. More or less, Georgia is revealed to be the dog napper, and she gets away with it in the end, having made off with the Duchess. In all reality, there's a chance that she could have been the one who took Carl's dog, but for now, that's a loose end that they're gonna leave untied. All things Carl taken into consideration, this episode is a good one to make us start to see that under his seemingly brash outer layer that's been shown to us this entire first season, there's a complex kid who has a lot of feelings. As far as Ginger is concerned, I have to bring up that the use of her journaling is something that I completely adore. Throughout the entire series, her writings are used as a really captivating plot driver, often serving as the bookends for the episode and sometimes driving the plot by conveying Ginger's inner thoughts. In this episode, it felt like they did such an amazing job of using that strategically, and honestly, this one had me drawn to her inner musings with heavy interest. In the beginning, when they're setting the scene for what her summer journey is going to look like, she's thinking about how life is like a blank journal waiting to be filled when you're a kid going into summer vacation. The symbolism here was a really amazing thing for me to take in personally. The feeling of going away from school for the summer and experiencing something new, the possibility of revisiting old connections or creating new ones. To her, as a kid in junior high school, it's easy to feel like you're drowning in the everything of it all. There's a lot of pressure there. Academic standards, social standards, and balancing personal relationships on top of that. The worry of being liked, worrying about what others are thinking about you. Then, all of a sudden, you reach the end of that chapter and you find yourself in a position where you can start brand new, so to speak. The setup for this episode really encapsulated that feeling very well. As a kid, I never really went to summer camp or anything like that. I always hung out with the same group of friends every summer, so I didn't really have any experiences similar to Ginger. However, I will say this much. The way that they portray it in this episode comes across very relatable and believable. Furthermore, her leaving behind the stress of school is reaffirmed when we hear Ginger journaling about how sometimes you feel like a different person when school lets out and summer vacation starts. That's definitely a byproduct of how that age comes with a lot of dwelling on what others around you think and how they perceive you. It becomes a constant worry that looms over you. Then summer hits, and all of a sudden, you're not thinking about those people whose opinions you were so worried about. Apart from her talking about life feeling like a clean slate, essentially, we see her later on journaling about the separation between her home friends and her away from home friends. She brings up how seeing those two worlds collide can truly make you see them in a completely different light. This, of course, is foreshadowing how bringing Courtney into the mix is going to stir the pot as far as life at camp goes, but ultimately she's going to end up looking at Courtney differently by the end. Just slightly. I really appreciated this show through and through for their tactical use of Ginger's journaling for a means of conveying further context to the story that's being told. Now, on another note though, this episode definitely gave us a lot of info about Courtney. Seeing her finally be humbled was definitely something that as a viewer, I feel like we were all waiting for. In this episode, we see her finally learn what it's like to not be the popular girl. She figures out the hard way that her popularity in junior high school isn't going to get her really anywhere in life. It's kind of refreshing to see her get taken down a peg and to finally get a glimpse of what the real world is like. However, even with that kind of situation, she still doesn't fail to make life harder for Ginger. Even outside of a school setting, Courtney can't stop herself from causing issues. She essentially spreads rumors about Ginger around the camp, and for what? To make herself look better in front of Ginger's camp friends who Courtney is literally never going to see again? It's just ridiculous when you put it into perspective that way. Like, Courtney struggles to fit in here, so she decides to try to make herself seem cool to Ginger's camp friends by telling them that basically there's a lot that they don't know about Ginger, including that she has a boyfriend, all thanks to Courtney, which obviously is a flat-out lie. Courtney doesn't care though, because Ginger's reputation and what is or isn't true about Ginger's life is something that doesn't matter to Courtney. All she cares about is her own popularity, and to her, this is somehow going to gain that even further for her. In all reality though, Ginger's friends didn't seem to care at all about Courtney. Her saying this to them didn't really seem to make them see Courtney any differently. All it did was skew their perceptions of Ginger. Then, of course, as a result of Courtney being Courtney and spreading these false rumors, Sasha ends up having his perceptions of Ginger changed. This right here, oh man, don't get me started on this kid. Him and Ginger were getting along really well. She didn't give him any reason to not take her word about who she was or what she was saying about herself. She said nothing but truth to him and was nothing but friendly on top of that. Meanwhile, Courtney was an absolute jerk to Sasha and made a terrible first impression. She treated Sasha like he was a servant, and as a result, I wouldn't blame him if he literally tuned out every single word that fell out of Courtney's mouth. Instead of that though, when she starts spouting off about some rumors about Ginger, he's quick to make really negative assumptions about Ginger based off of Courtney's complete lies. This, to me, was really telling of Sasha's character as a person. It's a red flag in my opinion, 100%. It shows that he's quick to assume the worst of people. He didn't even think to approach Ginger calmly and give her the chance to explain herself. Like, straight up, instead of talking about his feelings, this boy would rather name a calf after the guy that he thinks is Ginger's boyfriend. Like, he full-blown just assumed that Ginger was lying to him even though she did nothing to deserve that. More than anything, I feel like this episode really painted Sasha in a negative light, and it kind of made him seem like a massive jerk. Like, by the end of it, he didn't even learn anything. It felt like this was just another stone left unturned, if I'm being honest. In all reality, Sasha is a huge jerk to Ginger, and he is completely in the wrong about her. But instead of having a healthy conversation and owning up to the fact that he was wrong, he just continues to assume the worst and think bad of her. Even up to the end, when he was making a nasty face towards her when everything was said and done. What does Ginger do in return, though? She publicly shares the really sweet song that she wrote about him. We don't see any point where Sasha apologizes for his actions and gives Ginger the chance to explain how things really are. This seems like it's going to be a constant thing for Ginger throughout the entire series. She always takes the high road and ends up being the better person. It happened with Ian Richton, it happened with Sasha, and something tells me that we're going to see it happen a few more times over the next few videos in the series. By all means, the ending was really sweet, with Ginger clearly reflecting back happily and gazing towards the locket that Sasha gave her, but it really left a lot of stones unturned and left us really wondering what's going to happen next. By the end of this season, we're all wondering, is she going to keep pursuing Ian? Is she finally going to make a further effort to pursue these feelings that we know she has deep down for Darren? But on top of that, how is all of that going to affect what happens between her and Sasha next year at Camp Caprice? With all of that being said though, these questions are all things that would be addressed in the near future, as they would end up being answered in due time. All things considered, as much as I feel like this season finale left many stones unturned, I know that they did that for a reason. These T's were left uncrossed and these I's were left undotted on purpose, and these questions that we all have would be answered in due time. More than anything, this video and the next few to follow are intended to focus on Ginger and Darren, the lead up to their potential relationship, and laying the foundation of the show. It also served to show us the complexity of everyone's emotions, but especially Ginger's. This episode showed us how much she's really juggling things emotionally. There are many different aspects to Ginger's personal relationships, from her friendships to potential love interests. On another note though, I have to bring up how that certainly is the case for other characters as well. While Ginger and her friends were making memories at Camp Caprice, who would have thought in a million years that Darren would be building an initial common ground with Miranda? This would be a very interesting and ultimately unforeseen pairing. In the past, we've seen her acknowledge his existence, more often than not calling him Braceface or Metal Mouth. However, the bridging of the gap between them in this episode is something that would come completely out of left field. By all means, it didn't go too far in this episode, but I will say this much. This would be the planting of a seed that would blossom into something much bigger later on. Them coming together in this episode would end up foreshadowing quite a bit in the future. As far as Darren is concerned though, keeping in mind the context of everything we've digested just up to this point, I can't help but wonder how he could have possibly felt about Ginger's song that she wrote about Sasha. He was right there to hear her play it, and we know that fresh after the song, while she still has guitar in hand, Sasha comes up to her and gives her a kiss on the cheek. I imagine that Darren might be feeling a bit conflicted. We know that he had some feelings that he was juggling when it came to him being second in line to Ian Richton when it came to going to the dance with Ginger in the last episode. On top of that though, one other thing I find myself wondering about as far as Darren is concerned is the part where he shares his letter from Ginger with Miranda. He tells her that she can't read the first 3 pages, which is understandable. I mean, all things considered, he doesn't have Ginger's permission to share any of this, so he probably shouldn't be sharing anything. But my brain immediately jumps to wondering what he was talking about with Ginger in those 3 pages specifically. It could be flirty banter between the two of them on the heels of the night that they spent together on the dance in the episode prior to this, or just maybe it could be that they've sent a few letters back and forth now over the span of camp, and maybe Ginger was responding to something Darren said about being in camp with Miranda. At the end of the day, Ginger and Darren are best friends. They confide a lot of their feelings in each other. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Darren said something to Ginger about how him and Miranda were hitting it off so well. Like, during their initial interaction under the barbed wire in the rain, there was certainly a little bit of flirty eyes exchanged between the two of them. With that being said though, that's just the curious part of my brain talking. As far as this episode goes from start to finish, it did a really amazing job of serving as a bookend for season 1. I'd say that this episode is definitely one that really left us with more questions than answers, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. What it did in the long run is give us hope. It gave us hope for the future of Ginger and where the wind will take her next. On top of that, it stoked the flame of drama in this show. Ginger is already a really complex and sensitive girl who's processing a lot of emotions. She's juggling her feelings for Ian while tackling peer pressure from people at school, as well as creepy boys like Jean-Pierre. She's battling internal feelings for Darren that the both of them have seemingly repressed and swallowed down as deep as they could. All the meanwhile, through all of that going on, this episode threw Sasha in the mix. This episode left us wondering who will end up winning Ginger's heart in the long run, but that's a question that wouldn't be answered for some time. The beauty of an ending like this one though, is that it doesn't feel the need to rush those answers. By the end of this episode, we see Ginger laying in her bed, reflecting on life and where she's at, reveling in the moment, and more than anything, realizing that from where she's standing, her grass is green. But what do you guys think? Did you enjoy this video? Please let me know in the comments down below. I felt a lot of passion to make this video, and I have the next few parts of it already wrapped out in my mind, so please, if you want them to be a thing, definitely let me know by leaving me a comment. Of course, shout out to my patrons, especially those of you who are part of the true 90s Kids tier. You guys are the absolute sweetest folk to walk this earth, and I really appreciate you so much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who stuck around and watched this video. If you enjoyed it, consider dropping a like and giving some praise to the algorithm. And as always, I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Peace.